Chapter 569. The martial addict's worries were not unfounded. He had just swallowed the phlegm that Fong Yin spat out. If Fong Yin had any infectious diseases like tuberculosis or AIDS, wouldn't he be in trouble as well? Besides, this kid was covered in flowers and leaves. No one would believe him if he said he didn't have AIDS. He felt disgusted to ask such a question, but he was worried if he didn't ask. After hesitating for a long time, he couldn't help but say what he was worried about. Are you sick? Fong Yin wasn't sick. Even if he was, it would only be his psychological problem. Fong Yin looked at the martial addict and clasped his hands together, then said, "Senior, you asked me to fight with you at the top of the one-sword peak tonight. Now that I'm here and we've fought, is this the end of the matter? This kid has not learned martial arts for a long time, and his kung fu isn't high. Elder, you should find someone more powerful to spar with. Only they can be your real opponent and satisfy your desire to fight." The martial addict was furious. He pointed at Fong Yin and scolded, "Why are you cursing me in a roundabout way? You said you're not learned martial arts for a long time and your kung fu isn't high. How did you send me flying? How did you break my cracking saber array? If you're not learned martial arts, then we deserve to die. Young man, don't be too arrogant or you'll kick a steel plank." Fong Yin thought about it seriously and said humbly, "Thank you for your reminder. I'll keep your words in mind. If I have the chance to kick a steel plank next time, I'll try my best to kick a hole through it." Fong Yin waved his hand and was about to walk down the mountain. He said, "Elder, it's getting late. My lungs haven't been well lately, so my family made me white fungus and pear porridge. I'm in a hurry to eat a bowl of porridge. Want to run?" The martial addict sneered. "It's just the beginning. And you want to go down the mountain already? Isn't it over?" Fong Yin asked in confusion. He had been knocked down by the martial arts fanatic once, and then he had broken his lightning star and knocked him down even more fiercely. Although on the surface, it looked like both sides were injured and both sides had won and lost, there were still some subtle differences. When he fell to the ground, he quickly got up, and it was his head that was bleeding, not his mouth. After the martial addict fell to the ground, he didn't move for a long time. It looked as if he had been killed by Zhang Heng. In the end, he even patted his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. No matter how I looked at it, it seemed that I won, right? That was just a warm-up. If a man did not fight to his heart's content and fight to the death, what kind of decisive battle was that? Do you think this is child's play? Before he finished speaking, he had already started moving. The martial addict's words were loud and vigorous, but when he rushed over, he was silent. This time, the martial addict didn't use the cracking technique. When his feet landed on the ground, there were no more air currents or cracks on the ground. His footsteps were silent, and he left no trace on the snow. His toes touched the ground, and as soon as his toes touched the ground, his whole body jumped high. He was like a balloon filled with air, light and flexible, as if he was walking on the tips of grass and branches. He was a completely different person from the martial arts fanatic who had just punched with thunderclaps and attacked with lightning bolts from his feet. Anyone who saw him would admire this middle-aged man's godlike speed and various difficult movements like a ghost. Soft technique. This time, Fong Yin really respected and admired the martial addict Ho Jindong. Just as ice and fire could not mix, soft and hard were also natural enemies. The cracking technique belonged to the strongest and most hard kung fu. When it was used, it was like thunder and lightning. He charged towards Fong Yin with the momentum of breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, as if he wanted to crush and destroy all the obstacles in front of him. But the soft technique was the opposite. It looked light and gentle, but it was impossible to guard against and unavoidable. It could easily kill people. The soft technique was not Tai Chi, but it was similar to Tai Chi's Four Liang moving 1,000 jin. For a weapon like a sword, a hard one was not as good as a soft one. 10 years for a hard sword, 30 years for a soft sword. Some people were good at using hard weapons and could use hard weapons to the extreme. For example, Azure Dragon's long spear. Some people were good at using soft weapons and could make soft swords and whips a part of their body. For example, Black Dragon's 100 Ghost Beard and Yi Wen's long whip. But very few people could practice these two weapons or their strength to the extreme at the same time. First, it was too time-consuming, and second, it was necessary to specialize in one to become a god in that field. If he was half-hearted, then he might face a result that would not be pleasing to either side. Others were not willing to do it, but the martial addict did it. Because of his obsession with martial arts, the martial addict was not willing to give up on any opponent, and he was not willing to give up on any kind of attempt. That was why he could be listed as one of Hua Xia's 7 addicts. He was serious because of respect, and cautious because of admiration. Seeing the martial addict's body rushing towards him as if it was floating, Fong Yan's long robe swayed slightly, and he displayed the Fong family's triangular plum blossom steps, taking the initiative to meet the martial addict. As the distance closed, the little dragon catcher hand went to buckle the martial addict's wrist. The martial addict flipped, and Fong Yin buckled again. The martial addict flipped again, and when Fong Yin dodged, he buckled again. There was no sound of airflow, and there was no sword light or shadow. One wanted to buckle the opponent's wrist, and the other wanted to counterattack when he flipped and dodged. If he failed, he buckled again. If he failed again, he buckled again. His wrists flipped, and his fingers moved like lightning. In just a short period of time, they had already exchanged blows 368 times. Every move contained both offensive and defensive movements, and these two movements contained endless variations. This was the simplest duel because it was just the two of them standing there and flipping their hands and feet. This was also the most dangerous duel, because if one was a step slower or accidentally got his hands and feet locked by the other, he would lose all his advantages and face a storm of attacks. The possibility of a one-hit kill was also very high. The martial addict's advantage was that his moves were elegant, and his attacks could be said to be unpredictable. Fong Yan's advantage was the help of the Taiji heart. In the Taiji domain, the trajectory of the martial addict's every move was clearly visible. After more than 300 flips and attacks, the martial addict finally became a little impatient. He roared, and his body suddenly floated high up in the air like a balloon. His body spun wildly in the air, and the airflow caused by the rotation turned into a black whirlpool of wind. A strong gust of wind blew and enveloped Fong Yin, who was on the ground. Whoosh! Fong Yin was covered by the tornado, and in an instant, he was in the eye of the storm. His mouth couldn't speak, and his eyes couldn't see. All he could hear was the whooshing sound of the wind and the indistinguishable wails of ghosts and wolves. Since you don't let me see and don't let me hear, then I might as well not see and not listen. Fong Yin stood still and closed his eyes. Whoosh! A fist suddenly came, aiming straight for Fong Yan's ear. The ear was one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body, and the ear was very close to the temple. With a single punch, his entire head would explode. The fist was hidden in the darkness and came together with the sound of the wind. It was very difficult for people to notice its existence. However, how could this deceive Fong Yin, who had the Taiji heart? Fong Yin tilted his head and just happened to avoid the punch. Another kick came toward Fong Yan's groin with the sound of the wind. Fong Yin was furious, and his body moved 3 steps to the side and just happened to avoid this ruthless attack. Then, an overwhelming barrage of attacks came from all directions. Fong Yin could clearly feel that the martial addict wasn't fighting alone, but there were countless people fighting with him. He wasn't facing a single person, but a group of unfathomable evil spirits. Whoosh! As Fong Yin punched out, other than the sound of the wind, there was no other sound. Pretty boy, don't make any useless struggles. This is the cotton art. My heart is cotton. My body is cotton. Everything I have is cotton. The cotton is always floating in the wind. The martial addict attacked Fong Yin from all directions, while loudly showing off his unique skill. Save it. I advise you to save your strength. How can you hit the cotton? Before your fist could even reach me, the air current would have already washed the cotton away. Don't you think this move is very familiar? Yes, this is what I learned from Don't Underestimate the Enemy's Drunken Crane Riding the Wind. What kind of enlightenment is that? Fong Yin sneered in his mind. Isn't this obviously plagiarism? Don't you have any shame? Whether it's enlightenment or plagiarism, in any case, this is my cotton art, Drunken crane riding the wind is only a set of footwork, but I've turned it into a set of martial arts. Isn't this my own creation? Don't underestimate the enemy is a genius, but he doesn't think about martial arts and is greedy for the love and affection of the world. If he wholeheartedly pursued Tao, how could he have lost to the dragon god? What a pity! How hateful! Fong Yin didn't say anything, only closed his eyes and focused on feeling it. He felt the all-pervasive punches and kicks, and felt the cracking kung fu that appeared in the tornado from time to time. Yes, the martial addict is a genius in martial arts. Sometimes he's frivolous, sometimes he's tough. He's a cotton, but this cotton is able to use the strongest and toughest cracking art. Whoosh, 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 the wind howled. Ayo, ayo, ayo. Ghostly cries and wolf howls. Crack, crack, crack. This is the cracking art's lightning-like shadow. The martial addict alone can bring about such a huge battle, using 3 different styles of martial arts to duel. Fong Yin felt very wronged. He felt like he was being completely suppressed. Pretty boy, make your move. Make your move. Make your move. Use your most powerful skill. Use the heart of Tai Chi. Let me see how strong you are. Let me see if you're the top expert of Tai Chi. Fong Yin, be angry. Fight with all you have. Otherwise, you won't have another chance. Clang. Fong Yin's body shot up like an arrow, then threw a punch. It was like a humanoid anti-aircraft gun. The wind stopped, the clouds stopped. The lightning disappeared. The howling of the wolves also disappeared. The martial addict's body flew high into the sky, reaching a height that was hard to see with the naked eye. He's flying so high. Fong Yin looked up, muttering to himself. Chapter 570. Bam! Like a bull falling from the sky, Ho Jindong's body slammed into the mountain peak. Crack! There was a protruding rock under his body that was crushed by his huge body. Fong Yin could feel the earth trembling, as if the entire sword peak was about to be turned into a sword field. The martial addict laid there motionlessly. His body was surrounded by flying dust. "Senior," Fong Yin called out. No one answered. "Senior, are you all right?" Still no one answered. "Don't tell me he's dead?" Fong Yin frowned. "And he didn't sign I won't take any responsibility if you die agreement before the fight. If the martial addict really died, wouldn't I have to take responsibility if the police came looking for me? Uncle Police, that man forced me to fight. He used my family to threaten me and said that if I don't come, he'll harm my girlfriend. I already told him to stop fighting, but he wouldn't let me go, saying that it was only a warm-up. Dash, why is my life so bitter?" Fong Yan's eyes became hot, almost tearing up. "I'm not dead." Dash, a hoarse voice came from where the martial addict was lying. The martial addict slowly sat up with his hands on the ground, but he didn't have the strength to get up. His expression was a mess. His face was split open one after another. Blood stained his cheeks, and even his eyes were bloodshot. It wasn't until now that Fong Yin noticed that he was sitting there naked. His clothes had already been burned away during the high-speed rotation, turning into invisible dust. A naked middle-aged man sitting on top of an empty valley. This scene really made people want to turn around and run. The martial addict looked at Fong Yin with a bitter expression and asked, "How did you find me?" "I wanted to find you." "So, I found you," Fong Yin replied. "Impossible. I hid in the middle of the tornado. My heart was like cotton. My body was also cotton." Fong Yin laughed and said, "You say you are cotton. Do you really think you are cotton? I have to admit, your cotton martial art is indeed very powerful. You have reached the pinnacle of using your body and strength. If it was someone who was not up to standard, they would definitely be blasted into smithereens by this move of yours." "Cut the crap," the martial addict said. "You suddenly punched out. My body hadn't moved to the space above you yet. I only had that thought. How did you know I would get there?" "I have the heart of Tai Chi," Fong Yin said. "The heart of Tai Chi contains the realm of Tai Chi. I've recorded all of your movements and analyzed them. Finally, I found your figure and sent you flying with a punch. That's it?" The martial addict asked dejectedly. "Who is he?" "He was the martial arts addict, one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia. He was the best at martial arts among the 7. Of course, the music addict was also the best at music among the 7. The medicine addict was also the best at medical skills among the 7. He knew that Fong Yin was quite strong, otherwise he wouldn't have asked him to spar with him. He also knew that he was quite strong, otherwise, how could he become one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia? There would always be a winner and a loser in a battle, but who would be willing to lose rather than win? There's also the most important point. Fong Yin said, "What is it? You talk too much." Fong Yin answered truthfully, "When you were fighting me, you kept showing off the origin of your martial arts. I was able to accurately lock onto you based on the position of your voice." Fong Yin looked at the martial addict whose head was covered in blood and said, "Senior, thank you for letting me win. Can I go down a mountain now? There really is porridge at home. I need to go back and eat a bowl while it's still hot." The martial addict waved his hand and said, "Go, go. I hope you still have the strength to go back and eat a bowl of porridge." Fong Yin smiled and said, "I don't have the strength to fight, but I still have the strength to eat porridge." The martial addict coldly smiled as his body weakly laid down on the ground. Seeing the martial addict's weak expression, Fong Yin thought that he was unwilling to lose to him. So he tried to console him. "Senior, winning and losing are common in battles. Although I've never lost before, I don't think you should place too much emphasis on winning and losing. If you fall from my hands, you'll have to find your way back from someone else. You're the martial addict. Who are you afraid of?" "Scram!" The martial addict angrily roared. "Scram as far as you can." Fong Yin laughed and said, "Senior, the wind on the mountain is cold, and there are many insects. Be careful." Although the martial addict was heavily injured, the wind and insects on the mountain couldn't do anything to him. So Fong Yin calmly walked down the mountain. The martial addict opened his eyes and looked up at the starry sky with a bitter expression and softly said, "Brat, I'm sorry. Love will be like a hungry wolf. How can I hug him to sleep? He'll definitely leave me with severe wounds as a souvenir. Love will be like a hungry wolf. His mouth is sweet. If I come closer to play, his ferocious face will appear." Fong Yin was very happy. Fong Yin liked to drink and sing whenever he was happy. His Cantonese wasn't very good. He only started to learn it after he arrived at Huacheng. That's why Heavenly King Zhang's classic Cantonese song Legend of the Hungry Wolf was sung by him in Huaxia language. You don't say, it really does have a different kind of unpleasant taste. While singing Legend of the Hungry Wolf, Fong Yin happily walked down the steep mountain path. If someone looked at him from afar, they would definitely think that he was a pervert in heat. As he walked, Fong Yin suddenly remembered something very important. "Where's Snake Lord?" Fong Yin thought to himself. Although he didn't let the Snake Lord follow him, his intention was to let the Snake Lord protect him in secret. Now that he was safe and sound and had defeated one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia, Ho Zhendong, shouldn't the Snake Lord quickly stand up and flatter him by saying something like, "I knew you would win. This child really doesn't know anything." Fong Yin turned around, and it was pitch black behind him. If Fong Yin was an ordinary person, he would have already shouted Snake Lord's name at the top of his lungs. But Fong Yin wasn't an ordinary person. He was a man who defeated the martial addict. Therefore, Fong Yin decided to call the martial addict. Thanks to technology, Fong Yin wanted to take out his phone from his pocket, but he found that his phone had already disappeared. After thinking for a long time, he remembered that he didn't bring his phone with him when he went out. It wasn't the first time he had a duel, and every time after a duel, he would lose a phone. Later, after he gained experience, he didn't take his phone with him when he went out to fight. If the police picked up his phone, wouldn't it prove that he was at the scene of the crime? Besides, he had to spend money to buy a phone. Fong Yin couldn't contact the Snake Lord, so he planned to wait for him at the parking lot at the foot of the mountain. Although he was the master of the Snake Lord was just his snake slave. However, Fong Yin was not a heartless employer. He still cared about the life and death of his follower. Although his follower's mind had never been on his side, he had to work for him because he was forced. Sometimes Fong Yin was really curious about what kind of woman the sister of the Snake Lord was, and why she could make the Snake Lord make such a big sacrifice. If she was good-looking, he would go and court her. If she was not good-looking, he would let Fong Ying court her. In that case, he or Fong Ying would become the brother-in-law of the Snake Lord. Of course, Fong Yin couldn't do such a thing. He already had a girlfriend, and he couldn't let Yi down. He didn't dare. She turned off the evening light, covered her shoulders, intertwined sparks, imprisoned in precipitation. Fang Yin sang his Huaxia version of the passionate song again. Clang! The sound of stones rolling came from behind him. Fang Yin turned around as fast as lightning and shouted, "Who is it? Come out." No one answered, and naturally, no one came out. Fang Yin stood there for a few seconds and said with a sneer, "Come out. Don't hide your head like a turtle. I've already seen you." Crash! The leaves swayed, and a pitch-black figure leaped up from a tree that was as thick as a person. Whoosh! The black shadow landed on the ground without a sound. It seemed that his qin gong was very good. Fang Yin didn't expect that someone would really jump from the tree. He was shocked and shouted, "Come out together, don't hide." Clang! A short old man appeared on top of a large rock. His gaze was as sharp as lightning as it swept across Fang Yin. "Ha ha, you're a smart one. Even my silkworm detection art couldn't fool you." Another old man jumped up from the tall grass on the side of the road and revealed his small head. Fang Yin opened his mouth wide as he looked at what was happening in front of him. Isn't this a bit too fucking cooperative? I just randomly shouted, "How did you really come out? If I tell you to come out, then you come out. If I tell you to scram, then will you scram?" So, Fang Yin sneered and shouted, "Since you don't want to come out, then don't blame me for not serving you." After saying that, Fang Yin turned around and ran down the one-sword peak. "Didn't we come out?" The small old man, sitting in the grass, asked with a confused expression. "I've already spoken. How else can I prove that I've come out?" The big old man sitting on top of the large rock sneered and said, "That brat is playing tricks. He's afraid that we'll wrap him up like a dumpling." The small old man in the grass snorted and said, "I'm afraid he won't be able to leave One-Sword Peak tonight." "That's not necessarily true," the man in black with a black veil said with disdain. The two old men, one with a big head and one with a small head, were furious. The small head old man said angrily, "Whose side are you on?" The big old man coldly looked at the man in black and said, "No matter what, this brat is going to die today. Why aren't you going to chase him?" Before he finished speaking, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and leaped high up from the boulder. Like a rock spreading its wings, he chased after Fang Yin fiercely. The little old man's sharp eyes swept over the black-robed man, and he also chased after him. The man in black stood still and looked at the distant star in the sky and sighed. Chapter 571. When Fang Yin punched Ho Jindong into the sky, he felt that he had turned martial fanatic into Grey Wolf. Now Fang Yin ran as fast as he could, feeling like Happy Goat who was about to be eaten by Grey Wolf. No matter how smart Happy Goat was, he still fell into Grey Wolf's trap. This was an ambush. They had already planned for this moment to come. From the encounter with martial fanatic on the Pearl River, to the fairy offering flowers, to the demonstration of the cracking turtle technique in school, to the provocation and threats at noon, and the crazy battle on the One-Sword Peak just now. Otherwise, how would they know that he was going to compete with martial fanatic Ho Jindong tonight? How could they just happen to hide on the way back after his great victory? There were not so many coincidences in this world, and all coincidences could be manipulated by a mastermind behind the scenes. Fang Yin could even guess who the mastermind was, but it was too late to say anything now. Without a doubt, Martial Fanatic was also one of them. Martial Fanatic was one of Huaxia's 7 fanatics. How could he also be one of them? Fang Yin did not understand. He did not understand at all. How could Martial Fanatic be bribed? What else could he be bribed with? For someone who loved martial arts so much, what else could he be greedy for? And there was a more serious fact that Fang Yin did not dare to think about because it was too hurtful and too cruel. Escape. Use all the strength in his body to escape. Why should he escape? Why not fight with them? Fang Yin was not an idiot. Knowing that the enemy was strong and he was weak, why would he take the initiative to run to his death? Our ancestors told us many years ago that the first rule of fighting is, fight if you can win, run if you can't. Fang Yin had just fought with Martial Fanatic, and he had used up too much of his strength and stamina. Now it was his weakest time, but he did not know how many people the other side had. How many people had come? One jumped down from the big tree. Another jumped up from the bushes, and another pretentious fellow stood on top of the big rock. What was this? run, like a stray dog in a sorry state. Fong Yin did not use the Fong family's plum blossom steps, nor did he use the old drunkard's drunken crane rides the wind. What he needed was to run in a straight line from the top of the mountain to the bottom, dodging trees and jumping rocks. Fong Yin's body jumped up and down, moving up and down. His body was as agile as a monkey, and his movements were as nimble as a rabbit. He was the spirit of the forest, a flea in the darkness. Asterisk pa, asterisk kacha. The sound of stones being crushed and branches being broken could be heard incessantly, attracting the pursuit of the people behind them. Panicking without choosing a path was Fong Yan's current state. There was a large rock in front of him. Fong Yin lightly tapped the tip of his foot and leaped high into the air. Swoosh! A streak of silver light flickered as it chopped towards Fong Yan's head in an incomparably biting cold manner. There was an ambush behind the rock, and it was an expert lying in ambush. He didn't show his head, and he didn't even see Fong Yan's body. Just from the way he leaped, he knew what he was going to do. A graceful slash, incomparably domineering. Fong Yan's body was still in midair, his body maintaining a diving posture. The sudden appearance of the slash had indeed caught people off guard. Fong Yan's body suddenly stopped in midair, as if he had suddenly lost gravity and Earth's gravitational pull. Yes, the current Fong Yin had indeed lost gravity and Earth's gravitational pull. He used the Tai Chi force to repel the air around him, putting himself in a state of vacuum. This way, he could instantly stop in midair as if he had cast a body freezing spell on himself. However, Fong Yin could only cast a body freezing spell on himself, but he couldn't cast it on others. When his body froze in midair, the long saber still slashed towards his body as if it had eyes of its own. Horizontal slash. This kind of saber technique originated from the Japanese kendo, and every slash had only one variation. Horizontal slashes and vertical slashes all had the word one, so it was also called horizontal slash. It was also known as true energy slash. This was because every time the saber slashed out, before the saber could hurt anyone, the true energy carried by the long saber would already be able to hurt someone. Fong Yin felt this strong energy, which was like an invisible knife attacking him. It collided fiercely with the protective barrier formed by Fong Yan's Tai Chi force, producing a hissing sound. The true energy of the horizontal slash was ultimately unable to break through the barrier, so it could only roar outside the barrier to vent its grievance and unwillingness. At the same time, the long saber itself also slashed horizontally. Fong Yin wasn't confident that his protective barrier could block the long saber. After his body stopped, he immediately used the willow catkin follows the wind. When the saber slashed towards him, the saber's energy and killing intent actually blew him away. Because the released energy was too strong, a transparent ball appeared around his body. Under the protection of the round ball, his body flew backward. The saber missed, and a gray figure leaped from behind the rock into the air at lightning speed. Retracting the saber, another slash. It was still the horizontal slash. The difference was that previously it was a horizontal slash, but this time it was a vertical slash. His body was also flying in the air as he chased after Fong Yin, who was flying backward. Fong Yin retreated very quickly. The black shadow chased even faster. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the process of chasing, the black figure consecutively slashed out 3 times, 1 horizontal slash, 1 vertical slash, and 1 demonic slash. The 3 slashes formed a rice shape, which happened to lock Fong Yan's body in the middle. Merciless rice slash. Pa! The energy barrier on Fong Yan's body shattered, and his body also fell backwards to the ground. Fong Yan's body landed on the ground, and the black figure's body also landed at the same time. From the time when Fong Yin encountered the rock to the sudden attack of the horizontal slash, it was only a blink of an eye. However, in such a short period of time, the black figure slashed out 5 times, and Fong Yin also dodged 5 times. The black figure held the long saber, and the tip of the long saber was pointed at the ground. The unfamiliar face was someone that Fong Yin had never seen before. But with the 5 slashes he had just made, he was certainly not an unknown person. Fong Yin smiled bitterly. His old friend was really willing to spend a lot of money this time. Couldn't wait any longer. Must he make me stay on this one sword peak tonight? While Fong Yin and the mysterious Abersman were confronting each other, there was the sound of hurried footsteps coming from behind. Obviously, the ambushers had also caught up. Sneaky brat. The small-headed old man ran in front of Fong Yin and angrily stared at him and said, "You ran without saying a word. Brat, why don't you run? Continue running?" Fong Yin looked at him with a smile and said, "Who said I didn't say a word? I shouted at the time that if you didn't show up, I wouldn't accompany you. Who said I didn't show up? I'm standing in front of you, and I've talked to you, and you still dare to say I didn't show up?" Fong Yin smiled and said, "But I didn't see you. Maybe you're too short." "Bastard brat, who are you calling short? Say it clearly." The small-headed old man was irascible, and when he heard Fong Yin say he was short, he was full of dissatisfaction and wanted to argue with him. The big-headed old man frowned slightly and said, "Why are you talking to him? Let's fight quickly and waste time." They wanted to fight quickly, but Fong Yin didn't want to fight quickly at all, because if he fought quickly, he would soon be finished by these people. He had just fought with the martial addict, and he needed more time to rest. Every minute of rest would increase his chances of winning or escaping in the battle. "Wait," Fong Yin shouted. "I have no enmity with you. Why do you treat me like this?" The big-headed old man sneered and said, "This question is unnecessary. If someone wants you to die, you have to die. Aren't these words too overbearing?" Fong Yin retorted bluntly. "If I tell you to eat sh*t, do you have to eat sh*t too? Presumptuous." The big-headed old man shouted angrily. "Brat, you're courting death. Don't blame me for being merciless. Kongzhu." Fong Yin thought for a moment and said, "King of Hell holds Kongzhu?" Kongzhu was stunned and said coldly, "So what if you know Grandpa's name? Anyway, don't even think about leaving this sword peak today. You're Kongzhu." Fong Yin pointed to the grumpy, small-headed old man and said, "You're Kongzhu's twin brother, Arhut Fist Xiaomu, right?" "That's me, Grandpa." Xiaomu nodded proudly. "Sure enough, rotten wood can't be carved," Fong Yin said with a smile. "Your brother has much more temperament than you, and he's also much better looking than you." Xiaomu flew into a rage, pointed at Kongzhu, and shouted, "Who said he has more temperament than me? Who said he's better looking than me? How can you tell? I'm obviously more handsome, okay? Everyone says I'm more handsome. You're lying through your teeth." "He's stalling for time," the nameless swordsman said. "Luo Jin, shut up. I want to make things clear with this bastard. What right does he have to say that Kongzhu is better looking than me? Kongzhu's head is so big, his body is so skinny, and he looks like a big-headed doll standing there. How can he have more temperament than me?" "Luo Jin?" Fong Yin looked at the swordsman, his eyes slightly trembling. "Blade Lord Luo Jin?" Blade Lord Luo Jin was a powerful figure who had been famous for decades and was an expert of the same generation as old drunkard Mo Qingdi. Back then, these people were all powerful and invincible. They were all the brightest and most dazzling stars in the inner martial world. Old drunkard Mo Qingdi once said that Luo Jin dominated the world with one move. He only knew one move and only knew one blade. His blade only had 3 transformations: horizontal slash, vertical slash, and evil slash. But it was only these 3 transformations that had cut down countless experts. Luo Jin did not answer Fong Yan's question and only looked at him coldly, as if he was looking at a corpse. Luo Jin did not talk to dead people, because he felt that it was a very inauspicious thing to do. Fong Yin laughed and said, "What an honor! I didn't think that I would meet so many famous experts in one night. Snake Lord, where the hell did you go?" Chapter 572. The mountain breeze was blowing, and the night was dark. On a moonless night, the star in the distant sky was the only light overhead. The martial addict was still lying on the ground, with no intention of getting up. He felt very bored, and he was not interested in doing anything. He even felt that getting up was very boring. Where to go after getting up? To do what? Therefore, even though Fong Yin had left for a long time, he was still lying in the same place. There were no mosquito bites and no venomous snake attacks. He had become one with the surrounding environment. He had become a stone or a tree. He had become a part of this world. The surrounding insects suddenly disappeared, and the grass that was blown by the breeze no longer swayed. Time stood still, and the whole world suddenly froze. It was a feeling that made one's whole body tense, as if the hair on one's body was even more ironed on one's skin. It was sticky and uncomfortable. The martial addict's eyes were slightly cold, but instantly became gentle again. He said, "Sit anywhere, I won't get up to entertain you." A man in a black robe stood on a large rock not far away. After hearing the martial addict's words, he moved to the place where the martial addict was lying and sat down cross-legged. He looked at the bored martial addict and asked in a low voice, "What? Do you want to cherish talent?" "I promised you, and I've done it," the martial addict said impatiently. He didn't like the feeling of being seen through, even though it was always easy for others to see through him. "You just did it," the man in the gray robe said. "I didn't do it. A young man who can solve my fairy's flower, a young man who can break my crack sword array. It would be a lie to say that he doesn't care. This is a good seedling." The martial addict sighed softly. "Why bother? I saw it all," the man in the gray robe said. "Otherwise, with your real strength, how could he escape so easily? You are a man who would not easily retreat even when facing Azure Dragon, and it is not easy for him to defeat you. How could he be beaten by this kid for a long time? Martial addict, you have no acting skills. You don't know how to act." "I have no acting skills, so I don't want to act," the martial addict said. "I told you, I won't kill him with my own hands. I'll just waste a portion of his strength. If you don't kill him, he will still die because of you. What difference does it make?" The gray-robed man said. "You know he won't be able to leave Solitary Sword Mountain tonight. We can't let him leave Solitary Sword Mountain either." "Not necessarily," the martial addict said. "Not necessarily?" The gray-robed man looked at the martial addict in surprise and said, "You have so much confidence in him. He's a different kind of person. He's also a person who can always bring people surprises. I know some physiognomy. He's not a short-lived person. Even if you didn't consume too much of his physical strength, do you know who he's going to face today?" "I don't know." Yama Palm Diablo, Arhut Fist withered with those two lackeys with no integrity. "We were born to be brothers." The gray-robed man was not angry and said with a smile, "There is also an old friend of yours, Saber Monarch Luo Jin." "Luo Jin?" The martial addict's expression froze. He smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't think you would even invite him. Luo Jin disappeared for 20 years, right?" "No, 24 years. Do you know where he went?" "I do." "Where did he go?" "Nameless Mountain. Nameless Temple in Nameless Mountain." "Yes. He's in Nameless Temple in Nameless Mountain." "Why is he there?" "Because he doesn't want to leave." The martial addict suddenly sat up straight and said, "You gave him the Saber Manual?" "Yes, I gave him the Saber Manual." "No wonder." The martial addict's eyes lit up, and he said, "The Saber Manual of the Saber Kingly Big Mouth can indeed make someone stay in a place and conceal their identity for 24 years. It's definitely worth entrusting one's life to. Beauty is given to beauties. Sword is given to heroes. The Saber Manual should have been given to Luo Jin. Only he has the right to take it." The gray-robed man said, "He's the best saber user in the inner Jianghu." The martial addict finally crawled up from the ground. He looked at the gray-robed man sitting cross-legged in front of him and said, "What do you want? Why did you gather so many experts to risk their lives for you?" "For a wish." "What wish?" "You'll know in the future," the gray-robed man said. 20 years ago, you lost to the Azure Dragon and fell into the martial barrier. You traveled hundreds of miles to Nameless Mountain and asked me to guide you. I taught you a move. Yes. The martial addict nodded. You taught me the Fairy Flower Offering. From the Fairy Flower Offering, I comprehended 3,200 variations of martial arts and successfully broke through the barrier. So you agreed to do 3 things for me. I've already done the first one for you today. There are 2 more. The gray-robed man said, I don't want to be like this again. Continue to lie down. The gray-robed man said, It's cool and refreshing here. I can enjoy the good times at the foot of the mountain. The show down there should be starting soon, right? Why didn't you do it yourself? The martial addict suddenly asked. Why didn't you kill him yourself? Because I promised someone to spare his life. Then why did you ask someone else to kill him? I didn't promise to spare his life. The gray-robed man said something that was difficult to pronounce. The martial addict's IQ was low. It took him several times to understand the meaning of this sentence. After the gray-robed man finished speaking, he stretched out his body and disappeared. The show should be starting soon. The martial addict muttered to himself, What a pity, don't underestimate your enemy. Fong Yin was very angry at the Snake Lord. As a snake slave whose snake eye was controlled, you had to protect your master at all times. If your master wasn't safe, you wouldn't be able to keep your little life either. Fong Yin originally thought that the Snake Lord was silently protecting him in a dark corner. Wasn't it the nature of a snake to take advantage of an unprepared person to bite him? But now he was facing the Yama Palm Diablo and the Arhut Fish Xiaomu, and there was also the Sword Lord Luo Jin who was waiting for him and could strike at any time. At this time, Fong Yin needed help. He needed someone who could fight side by side with him, someone who he could trust his back with. In front of Fong Yin stood the Sword Lord Luo Jin and the Arhut Fish Xiaomu, and behind him stood the Yama Palm Diablo and the masked man in black. If the Snake Lord didn't appear, Fong Yin would be in a miserable situation of being attacked from both the front and the back. If Fong Yin was killed, no matter how powerful the Snake Lord's venomous snake was, what would be the point? Of course, Fong Yin had his own guesses. Could it be that the Snake Lord had already betrayed them and came to deal with him, waiting for his death to take back his snake? Fong Yin sneered in his heart. You want to take back what you gave away? I'll eat it in one bite and not give it back to you. It was just that it was a little disgusting to eat it, but he was going to die anyway, so he couldn't be too particular about it. Wouldn't it take too much time to let someone wash it and cook it before eating it? No one answered. The Snake Lord seemed to be dead. Dead? Fong Yin was shocked. This possibility did exist. It wasn't impossible for the ambushers to quietly kill the Snake Lord while he was fighting with a martial arts fanatic. However, the Snake Lord wasn't weak, and he was in the forest. Every insect and beast here could be his subordinates. If they wanted to kill the Snake Lord, they would need to expend a lot of effort, right? And in the process, the Snake Lord couldn't even send a message. What happened in the middle that he didn't know? The Snake Lord. Fong Yin shouted again. Your sister is out. Fong Yin felt that it was better to lie to him. Maybe he wouldn't be able to hide anymore once he heard that his sister was out. No need to shout. Xiao Mu sneered. He's already dead. Dead. Fong Yin's guess was confirmed, but he still felt a little uncomfortable. You said too much. Diablo was very dissatisfied with his idiot brother. After scolding his brother, he looked at the Sword Lord and said, Are you going to attack first, or should we? I just attacked 5 times, Sword Lord Luo Jin said. I'll attack 5 more times. If I can't kill him in 5 times, then it's your turn. Okay, Diablo said. Why should he go first? Xiaomu said unhappily. I also want to kill this kid. He said I'm not as good-looking as you. You really aren't as good-looking as your brother, Fong Yin said. He wanted to stall for a while longer. You bastard, shut up, Diablo shouted. If it weren't for the fact that this guy was his brother, he would have killed him. Diablo and Xiao Mu retreated, leaving the wide battlefield to Fong Yin and Luo Jin. They guarded the 2 sides, one on the left and one on the right, in case Fong Yin suddenly ran away while he was fighting. Fong Yin knew why they were doing this. He wanted to angrily ask them one question. Where's the most basic trust between people? Sword Lord Luo Jin held his long blade, his dead fish eyes staring unblinkingly at Fong Yin. Fong Yin was also looking at Luo Jin, looking at Luo Jin's eyes. It was very strange. His eyes were very cold, but there was no killing intent in them. Could it be that he didn't want to kill him? Fong Yin knew that the possibility of this was very low. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill him. He just treated him like a pig or a chicken. Which butcher would have killing intent in their eyes when they were killing a pig or a chicken? They only treated it as a kind of profession, a habit, a way to make a living. To them, stabbing a knife into the neck of a pig or cutting off the neck of a chicken was a very insignificant matter. Why would they need killing intent, killing intent, killing intent? Fang Yin felt threatened. He felt the huge deterrence brought about by the saber in the man's hand. Luo Jin held his long blade, walking step by step towards Fang Yin. That's right, he was walking. He did not run, nor did he bend over to dive. He was like an idiot, walking step by step towards Fang Yin. He stopped in front of Fang Yin, then slashed his blade towards Fang Yin's head. Chapter 573. It was just a normal slash. There was no lightning, no howling wind, no tearing of space, no burning of the air. There wasn't even any chi. The Blade Monarch's slash had no chi flow. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? How could one injure someone without chi flow? How could one defeat the enemy without chi flow? It was like a woodcutter chopping firewood or a boorish man hoeing the ground. Their object was to cut the log in two and to soften the hard ground. That was all. Therefore, there was no need for strength. A simple slash. Slash, straight slash. No fancy movements, no complicated foreshadowing. If I want to slash you, I'll slash you. It was that direct, that willful. This slash is called chopping firewood, the Blade Monarch said in a low voice. His voice was as slow and deep as the speed at which he swung his saber. It was as heavy as a 1,000-pound boulder pressing on one's chest, making it difficult to breathe. He took a step forward and slashed. This was the Blade Monarch's entire attack method. Even the name of his slash technique was simple and ordinary. It wasn't as impressive as the 18 dragon-subduing palms or the 90 manual's heaven and earth great shift, which sounded like an awesome move. Just say the name, and all the bandits, bullies, and thieves within a 10-mile radius would immediately leave without a trace. It wasn't as elegant as the melancholic sorrow palm or the lover's will sword, which made one's imagination run wild. Chopping firewood. Who came up with this name? If you're so perfunctory, I promise I won't beat you to death. Fang Yin didn't know the origin of the blade manual, so he didn't know why the name chopping firewood was used to name a slash technique. He just felt that the person who came up with this name was uncultured. Fang Yin's guess was right. The person who created this slash technique and named it was uncultured. Chopping firewood, Xiaomu laughed and said, "Fortunately, my Arhut fist is related to Arhut, so it sounds domineering and unconventional. Why isn't it called chopping vegetables?" "There's indeed a chopping vegetable technique," Kongzhu said in a low voice. "Really?" Xiaomu was shocked. What kind of martial arts did this saber monarch learn? I heard that he used the Luo family's falling rain knife, which was passed down in his family. When he waved the knife, it was like falling rain splashing, airtight. How did he become a chef now? Saber Monarch hasn't appeared for more than 20 years. Where do you think he went? Where did he go? He obtained the saber manual of the Saber King, Li Bigmouth. For the past 20 years, he has been practicing the saber in seclusion. Saber King Li Bigmouth? Xiaomu was shocked. The chef from prison? Yes, it's exactly the Knife King Li Bigmouth who came out of prison. Kongzhu nodded his head with a dignified expression. Li Bigmouth is a chef in the Hate Mountain prison. He has been cooking for the prisoners in the prison all his life. But because his father was a secular disciple of Shaolin Temple, he established the foundation of Shaolin Temple's hard martial arts since he was young, and he also came into contact with some strange masters and bandits. He chopped firewood and chopped vegetables every day for decades, and he actually created an invincible saber technique. After a pause, Kongzhu said with a serious expression, "Do you still remember the best archery in the world? Archer God Tang Lai? Not bad. It was Archer God Tang Lai. At that time, everyone thought that Archer God Tang Lai was the #1 expert in the Hate Mountain. They didn't even know who Li Bigmouth was. Once, Archer God went to the kitchen to inspect the work and saw Li Bigmouth's saber technique when he chopped vegetables. He was immediately deeply shocked. And then, the man in black behind him asked, "The noise of the big saber is like a torrential downpour. The cutting of the small saber is like a whisper. The noise of the cutting is like a mess of bullets. The big and small pearls fall on a jade plate. The silver bottle is broken. The liquid is splashed. The iron horse is galloping. The saber and spear are howling. When the song ends, the sound of a saber is like silk being torn apart. This was archer god Tang Lai's evaluation of Li Big Mouth saber technique. Tang Lai was delighted and asked Li Big Mouth to have a match with him. Did Li Big Mouth win? Li Big Mouth didn't win, Kongzhu said. He still lost? Archer God is Archer God, Xiaomu said with a sigh. It's a pity that I didn't have the chance to meet Archer God. Otherwise, I would definitely have a taste of his magical archery. Li Big Mouth didn't lose either, Kongzhu said. Xiaomu's bad temper flared up again as he grumbled. One moment you say Li Big Mouth didn't win, the next moment you say Li Big Mouth didn't lose. Did he win or lose? He didn't win or lose, Kongzhu said. Li Big Mouth knew Archer God Tang Lai's strength, so how would he dare to fight with him? So Tang Lai said to Li Big Mouth that they were just casually sparring and didn't know how to use arrows. In the end, Archer God used arrows? The man in black asked. Yes, Li Big Mouth's saber technique forced Archer God Tang Lai to use arrows. Kongzhu nodded. Tang Lai used arrows to subdue Li Big Mouth. He forced him to retreat. How do you know these things? Xiaomu asked. Why don't I know? Because someone saw Tang Lai, and Tang Lai said it himself. Kongzhu said. Archer God Tang Lai knew of Li Big Mouth's strength, so he began to guide him to develop his saber technique, and made him organize his saber technique and name it. Li Big Mouth didn't study much, so how could he do such a thing? After spending a few months, he finally thought of a way. What way? His saber technique only had 3 moves. One was a straight chop, named chopping firewood. This move was comprehended from his many years of chopping firewood. The second move was a horizontal chop, named chopping vegetables. This move was comprehended from chopping cabbages for more than 30 years. The last move was an upward or downward slash, and he named it eviscerate. It was trained from his daily practice of removing the bones of animals or the meat in the cracks of bones. He only had these 3 moves, but he was invincible with these 3 moves and became the saber king of his generation. Xiaomu pointed at the Lord of Saber Luo Jin and asked, then why did he slash out 5 times just now? Why could he slash out another 5 times? For the previous 5 slashes, he used his family's falling rain saber technique, or rather, the falling rain saber technique that was integrated with the unique technique of the saber manual. Obviously, those 5 slashes didn't cut this kid into 2. What he used now was the true unique technique of the saber manual. Even so, the black-clothed man behind him said, there are only 3 moves in this saber manual. How could he slash out 5 times? That is unknown. Kongzhu was a little annoyed by these 2 people's questions and said, it is possible that Li Big Mouth had other moves that were not recorded in the saber manual. Or it could be a saber technique that the Lord of Saber Luo Jin created after living in seclusion for more than 20 years. Who would know such a secret? Xiaomu laughed coldly and said, I hope Luo Jin's saber isn't too sharp. If he cleanly chopped Fang Yin into pieces, I wouldn't have the chance to make a move. Kongzhu coldly glanced at his little brother and said, watch the battle carefully from their point of view. This time, Fang Yin would die without a doubt. It was also because of this reason that they could still chat and talk about the secrets of the Jianghu in this kind of life and death battlefield. If it was anyone else who dared to so casually raise a long black saber and slash at him, Fang Yin would have already rushed forward and slapped that person in the face and cursed, are you sick? If you're sick, go back and get treated. But this person was the Lord of Sabers. Although his saber was not beautiful, and the name of his saber technique was not flashy, this person was the Lord of Sabers. He was a saber expert who had been famous for decades. Fang Yin had no choice but to be careful. When he walked towards him, Fang Yin was already on guard. His legs spread apart, his body slightly bowed, and his body swayed left and right, making a roly-poly toy posture. When the Lord of Sabers slashed out with his saber, Fang Yin felt that this saber technique was even more strange. It was too strange. Even the most useless member of the Fang family, Fong Yingxiong, could easily subdue it with brute force or skillful attacks without the use of qi. Perhaps even the most useless member of the Fong family, Fong Yingxiong, could easily defeat it. Fong Yin could completely avoid this saber, and he could use Drunken Crane riding the wind to deal with it, making it impossible for the Lord to find his real body. But Fong Yin didn't do this. The Taiji heart made his 5 senses extremely sharp, and there was a voice in his heart telling him not to do such a thing. Fong Yin didn't dodge, his body moved, and he faced the Lord of Sabers head-on. Facing the saber with both hands, it looked extremely stupid. The Lord of Sabers' eyes slightly trembled, and a trace of doubt flashed on his face. Then his expression became even colder, and the strength of his saber became even fiercer. The long saber arrived in an instant. Apart from the blunt wind brought by the heavy blade, there was still no abnormality. He still couldn't feel a trace of energy, not even a trace of killing intent. Fong Yan's body entered the range of the long saber. He wanted to use his speed advantage to enter the blind spot of the Lord of Sabers. The human body's organs were fixed, and the range of movement was also limited. Therefore, everyone's body had some blind spots that were hard to reach. For example, your back, your ribs, or any other place. When the Lord of Sabers fiercely slashed, his chest was the blind spot. Because if he stretched out his arm and raised the long saber, he wouldn't be able to use his arm and the long saber to protect his chest. Therefore, Fong Yin wanted to give him a fatal blow there. This was the attack route that he had already calculated. Everything went as he expected. No, it was even smoother than he had imagined. He easily entered the blind spot, and his fist was already aimed at the Lord of Sabers' heart. As long as his fist hit the Lord of Sabers' heart, the Lord of Sabers' heart might be blasted out of his body. Whoosh! Fong Yin suddenly sensed danger. He felt a piercingly cold, killing intent coming at him. All the pores on his body stood up, and he could feel his heart beating violently. A majestic killing intent came at him. It locked onto him from all directions. Fong Yin was like a puppet whose acupoints had been sealed, or a magician had cast a spell on him. He couldn't move his body at all. Fong Yin finally understood that this was a scam. This was the biggest scam. Chapter 574. What kind of kung fu was the best in the world? Everyone had a different answer in their heart. Countless people would have countless answers. But there was a fact that everyone recognized. Those who were good at qi were countless times stronger than those who practiced strength. Like a threshold, you knew how to use the qi in your body. You discovered more secrets of your body. Congratulations, you have the right to enter the Nejiang Lake. That's your ticket. If you practice strength all your life, even if you had infinite strength, you would lose miserably when you met a qi master. No matter how good a person's mental calculation ability was, what chance did they have against a computer? And a computer could calculate endlessly without eating or drinking, as long as it had enough energy. Strong body and strong bones. This was the level that 99% of martial artists could achieve. 1 against 10, 1 against 100. This was already a master chosen from 10,000. Understanding the world, searching for the mysteries of the human body, discovering air currents, guiding air currents, using air currents, smashing rocks and breaking wood, beating cows across mountains, cutting off rivers and rivers, destroying heaven and earth, falling stars. This was the power of God. Yes, from ancient times to the present, through the dynasties, countless people had searched for or wanted to borrow the power of God. Qin Shi Huang sent out countless virgin boys and girls to the celestial mountain to seek the immortality of the elders. Didn't it also because he believed in the existence of God? Those people in the Nejiang Lake, they were climbing on the God's path, going through hardships, spending time in life, just to one day be able to stand on the throne of God, to hold the sun and moon in their hands, to punch through the stars. Of course, that path was extremely painful and infinitely far, lonely and desolate, forgetting for a lifetime. But there was still a group of people who clenched their teeth and refused to give up. Luo Jin belonged to this group of people. He was one of the countless people who sought the Tao. The Blade King Li Dazue didn't practice using qi, but self-taught and comprehended a supreme blade technique. His blade technique could force the god of archery Tang Lai, who had qi, to retreat step by step, and in the end, he had no choice but to use a divine arrow to defend himself. In other words, Li Dazue subverted people's understanding. Not only qi could enter the Nejiang Lake. Li Big Mouth did not have any strength. So with the strength he displayed, could it be that he could not enter the inner river lake? Most importantly, through the research of Tang Lai and the others, when Li Big Mouth wielded his sword, he could use the most primitive qi of heaven and earth that had not been refined or guided by his body, which was the brute force that the people of Jianghu despised. The changes of the knife completely depended on the changes of the opponent. Luo Jin was the knife, and the knife was the wielder. This was Li Big Mouth's knife manual, the ultimate skill of the Knife King. Fang Yin became a puppet that could not speak or move. Apart from thinking, he could not do anything else. It was like a blooming epiphyllum, like Cinderella wearing crystal shoes, or like a huge black curtain with a meteor shower. That ordinary saber strike, that simple saber strike, suddenly became so dazzling that it was hard for people to look at it directly. Xiao, the long knife cut through heaven and earth, cut through the night sky. It flashed with a silver light, heading straight for Fang Yan's head. The current Fang Yin could only be trampled on. Don't. The masked man in black stared with her eyes wide open, screaming. No one would have thought that the Knife King would be so powerful. Just as she was about to pounce on Fang Yin, who was in the middle of the battle, Kongzhu suddenly made his move. With a stretch of his wrist, countless palm shadows overlapped, and the unprepared man in black was sent flying by his palm. Ha! The masked man's body landed heavily on the ground. Too powerful. Xiao Mu's eyes glowed, staring unblinkingly at the knife in the Knife King's hand. What a simple knife. The gray-robed old man on top of the mountain softly praised. What a dazzling knife. After the Knife King, another Knife King. This is a good sign. Don't. Fang Yin also roared in his mind. How could he die? He still had a lot of money to spend, a lot of things to do, a lot of women, without saying goodbye. He still had a lot of favors to repay, a lot of hatred to vent. How could he die? Even if he died, he cannot be killed by a knife. That way of dying would be too miserable and unsightly. If Fang Yingying saw his body that was cut in half, he would mutter next to the coffin, "How could I be cut in half? It doesn't fit the aesthetics of our appearance association." At that time, wouldn't Fang Yin jump out of his coffin and strangle him to death? The knife's edge was sharp, and the knife's intent was overwhelming. Fang Yin could only see one knife, but he could feel countless knives attacking him from all directions. The most unbearable torture was a mountain of knives or a sea of fire. To Fang Yin, he was currently drowning in a sea of knives. Ears were useless, so Fang Yin covered his ears. Eyes were useless, so Fang Yin closed his eyes. Even his limbs were useless, so Fang Yin allowed them to lock him up. Fang Yin's Taiji heart spun crazily. This time, it was spinning faster and fiercer than ever before. Huff, huff. His dantian was a fiery red, as if it was on fire. His sea of qi had turned into a wheel of fire that was hard to see with the naked eye, like a black hole in space that was constantly devouring everything around it. Fang Yin felt thirsty, as if his body was about to be cooked by the Taiji heart. So the Taiji heart can be used as a grill, Fang Yin thought. Strange, at such a dangerous moment. How could he have such a thought? Fang Yin really wanted to slap himself, and that was exactly what he did. Ha! His face burned with pain. But what made him surprised was that his hands and feet were still trapped by the knife intent that the Blade Lord Luo Jin had released, and he could not move at all. If that was the case, then who was it that slapped his face? Ghost slapping his face? It was said that when a person's martial arts reached a profound level, they could use a power that was not controlled by this world and was unknown to others. The people of Nejiang called this the ghost slapping face. The knife came closer and closer, already reaching the top of Fang Yin's head. Kacha, kacha, thanks to the Taiji heart, Fang Yin could clearly feel the hair on his head being cut off by the knife's energy. 1 hair, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fong Yin was very worried that after this fight, he would become Baldy. Yi Ro, Fong Yin yelled loudly. He did not know why he would yell out Yi Ro's name at such a moment of life and death, but at this moment, Fong Yin really missed Yi Ro. Let it be a farewell. As he yelled, he stretched out his hands to receive Luo Jin's knife. Yes, although his hands were trapped by the knife intent and the power of nature, but he still stretched out his hands. It was as if he wanted to slap himself in the face, and his face was burning with pain. Shua! A blazing sun soared into the sky, like a pillar of light shooting up to the sky. This silvery white light illuminated the one-sword peak, and then illuminated all things in the world. His appearance was too sudden, his light was too dazzling. It was a divine light, and it was also a holy light. In this pitch-black world, in this one-sword peak where there was no light, it was the only star. Therefore, the surrounding people found it hard to open their eyes. When everyone had adapted to his appearance, when everyone was able to open their eyes, they had all gotten used to him. They saw a miraculous scene. Chapter 575. The human body is a treasure trove. You will never know how rich you are. Scientists have discovered that a normal person has about 14 to 15 billion brain cells, but less than 10% of them are developed and used. Most of them are in a dormant state. According to statistics, 98.5% of the brain cells are dormant, and some experts believe that only 1% of the brain functions. After the age of 30, a person's brain cells were dying at a rate of 100,000 per day. Although this was insignificant compared to the 15 billion brain cells in the human brain, if the ones dying were developed and functional brain cells, it would inevitably affect the brain's performance and cause the brain to become sluggish. About 95% of our brain's potential has yet to be developed and used. Even scientific elites like Einstein only developed about 13% of their brain's potential. 13% may seem like a very insignificant number, but it is considered one of the smartest people in the world. According to the statistics of scientists, developing the brain's potential and making oneself smarter is not a fantasy. Have you seen Luc Besson's Naked Body? No. Have you seen Luc Besson's Superman? This movie has a vivid description of the development of the human body's potential. When a human body is stimulated by poison, it begins to stimulate the brain to develop itself. The female protagonist turned from a young girl who had no strong points other than her pretty face and big breasts into a superwoman who could turn freely in midair and fight drug dealers with her bare hands. She had telepathy, could instantly absorb knowledge, and could even move through space. She was a superwoman who had experienced the past and present lives. Finally, when the female protagonist's brain is 100% developed, she becomes an omnipotent and omnipresent god. This is a science fiction movie, but it is also the right direction for human development. In the era of Qin Shi Huang, a phone call can be transmitted to a foreign country thousands of miles away, and in a few hours by plane, you can see the vast territory of your empire. For the people of that era, this is a miracle. For modern people, the ability that Fong Yin is showing now is also a miracle. The Saber King slashes. It is the Saber King Li Big Mouth's chopping knife. Just the wind of the knife can cut hair and make people's scalp burn. If the knife hits the head, it will be like chopping firewood. It will split the person in half. The Saber King is indeed going to do this. This was his mission, his goal. He owed that man a great debt of gratitude. That man was his second parent. No, not even his parents could give him what he had now. For a man who had spent his entire life pursuing martial arts, there was nothing more important than a martial arts manual. Moreover, he had obtained the saber manual of the generation's Saber King, Li Big Mouth. That was the saber technique that the King of Fire, Tang Zhong, had tried to cultivate, but failed. How could he not treasure it? How could he not serve the person who gave him the saber manual? If he wanted Fong Yin dead, he would hack Fong Yin to death. This was the only thing he wanted to do on this trip. However, what was going on in front of him? Was he seeing a ghost or a god? The saber monarch's eyes widened in disbelief. He didn't know how to explain what was happening in front of him. What was happening? Why is this happening? Dao Jun muttered to himself. It shouldn't be like this. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Although there was only one blade, it had countless variations. Before he made this strike, he had already thought about Fong Yan's reaction. Escape and retreat. If he did that, his second strike, the chopping knife, would follow. After the heavy strike, it changed into a horizontal slash, cutting his retreating body into two. Of course, in the process of changing the move, there was a sudden acceleration. And Fong Yan's body was locked by the sneak attack of the saber intent and the force of nature. His hands and feet couldn't move to fight back, and he could only end up with his head separated from his body if he retreated. It was a condensed beam of light, like a silver-white transparent crystal, that sprang out from his body and reached hundreds of meters high in the sky. Fong Yan's ears didn't hear, and his eyes didn't see. His limbs were still bound by the saber intent and the force of nature that the saber monarch released. It was possible that he had already broken free. However, at this time, Fong Yan had forgotten to move his limbs. Fong Yan's limbs didn't move, but he subconsciously used his hands to block the saber monarch's chopping knife. Thus, the silver-white beam of light split into two arms of the beam of light. One on the left and the other on the right. They gathered in the middle, tightly holding the saber monarch's chopping knife. Fong Yan had actually grabbed the chopping knife, ignoring its sharp edge that could cut through iron like mud, ignoring its cold and domineering saber chi, ignoring the saber intent and the irresistible force of nature. It had easily blocked the saber monarch's chopping knife. What's going on? Xiaomu finally recovered from this incredible scene. Staring at the beam of light that had suddenly appeared, he flew into a rage and shouted, "What the hell is going on? Is this kid a monster? He must be a monster." Kongzhu stared at the beam of light in the sky without blinking. His mouth was slightly open, but he couldn't say anything. He had witnessed a miracle with his own eyes. This feeling, why did it make him feel so unhappy? The black-clothed man who had been sent flying by Kongzhu's Yama palm lay on the ground. Looking at Fong Yan, who was currently enveloped by the light, his eyes were filled with surprise and disappointment. The martial addict bowed deeply to the gray-clothed man and said, "Thank you." The gray-clothed man's eyes turned cold and said, "What? Do you cherish talent to such an extent? You, the martial addict, are also a prideful person, and yet you are willing to bow to me in his place? Why, I gave you the fairy flower offering. Did you say the word thank to me? For the sake of that irrelevant brat, you said the word thank twice." "I'm not saying thank you in his place," the martial addict said. "I'm saying thank you in my place. I can't become a miracle, but I can witness the rise of a miracle. Isn't this a kind of fortune? I'm not talented enough to walk a new path, but I can follow the path that others have already walked. This is also something that is infinitely beneficial to me. Saying thank you is a matter of course." The gray-clothed man sneered and said, "Aren't you celebrating too early? I only said that I won't do anything. I didn't say that others won't do anything. I have a tolerant heart. I can give him one more chance. Others might not be willing to watch him rise so quickly. If someone else tries to kill him, he might not be able to escape from this mountain. If the Blade Monarch's saber can't stop him, who else can?" The martial addict was shocked and asked, "Let's just watch." The gray-clothed man's mouth curled into a strange smile. The show has only just begun. Chapter 576. Martial fanatic Ho Jindong had a very reasonable saying, "I can't be a pioneer, but I'm honored to be a pioneer." He couldn't establish his own sect and become a legend. However, being able to be in the same generation as a legend was also a fortunate thing. Many years later, if someone wrote a history book, the battle between him and Fong Yan would be written down. Fong Yan turned into Ultraman, and the others became little monsters that surrounded and attacked Ultraman. The Blade Monarch felt it the most. According to the Blade Monarch's plan, once the momentum of the chopping blade was used up, he would immediately change it into a horizontal slash and use the second move, the kitchen knife. If the kitchen knife still couldn't hurt the enemy, then he would use the third move, the boning knife. Chopping firewood, chopping vegetables, and boning. The three moves were independent, but sometimes they could be combined into a single move. This was also the most powerful move in the Saber manual. Unfortunately, the Blade Monarch couldn't use these 3 moves in one go. His rhythm and pace of attack were already disrupted by the Tai Chi light that Fang Yin suddenly comprehended. The Blade Monarch gathered his chi in his dantian and wanted to chop the chopping blade in his hand. However, no matter how much strength he used, the chopping blade remained motionless in the middle of the 2 silvery white lights. It was as if it was embedded inside, fusing with the 2 crystal arms. Since he couldn't chop down and couldn't chop Fang Yin in half, he wanted to pull out the chopping blade in his hand. After pulling out, he would chop again. The chopping blade was still motionless. All his strength had already sunk into the sea. Fang Yin sensed the Blade Monarch's strange movement and knew what he was thinking. What is this? Fang Yin had been asking himself this question. Ever since that pillar of light appeared, ever since that seemingly solid pillar of light had been used by him to hold back the chopper that could have taken his life, he had been thinking about this question. Was there someone helping him? Who? That old monk or that old Taoist? If they could use the spring of withered wood, they could naturally use other more brilliant moves, for example, releasing the chi in their bodies and then condensing it into a substance to save themselves. Since they said that he was the guardian of the Taiji diagram, wasn't it natural for him to put in some effort? Or did the heart of Taiji mutate again? Last time, the image only turned into lines. Why was the mutation this time so strange and scary? Of course, it still looked quite cool. In the future, he could use this beam of light to fight with others, block people's kitchen knives, and touch little girls' buttocks. No one would know it was him who did it. Is it my turn now? Fang Yin looked at Dao Jun and asked with a smile. The Saber Monarch's pupils shrank as he asked in a cold voice, "What is this?" Everyone had the desire to win, and everyone also had curiosity. Saber Monarch knew that he was going to win, but he really wanted to know how he had lost. What the hell was that beam of light? Is it really a good idea to hide a flashlight on your head? This is the light of justice, Fang Yin said. A just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust one finds little support. You set up a trap to kill me. Even the heavens can't bear to watch. As he spoke, Fang Yin suddenly stretched out his palm. It was a light palm strike. Light clouds, light wind, like spring flowers and autumn fruits, like a drizzle of snow, like the chirping of insects and birds, like an earthworm loosening the soil. However, when the palm landed on Dao Jun's chest, Dao Jun's clothes were immediately torn to shreds by a majestic and overbearing force. Then, the shreds flew in all directions. Not a single piece of cloth fell to the ground, as it was already burnt to ashes in the air. Bang! Saber Monarch's abdomen caved in, then popped up again. At the same time, Saber Monarch's body was sent flying. Before he landed, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Puffed! Snowflakes splashed in the air as if it was raining blood. When Fang Yin struck out with his palm, the beam of light above his head disappeared. It came so suddenly and left so mysteriously. It was as if it had never appeared in the first place. Pow! Kongzhu kicked the ground with the tip of his foot and flew into the air. He grabbed Saber Monarch, who was still in midair, and leaped toward his brother, Xiao Mu. After they landed, Xiao Mu and the man in black were already standing in front of them, one on the left and one on the right, to prevent Fang Yin from chasing after them. They were originally spread out, each guarding a corner. However, after Fang Yin displayed extraordinary martial arts skills that shocked them, they had no choice but to change their attacking stance. In other words, they had now gathered into a defensive formation. In the arena, strength was everything, and whoever was stronger would be more arrogant. After Saber Monarch was defeated, Fang Yin took control of the situation. Ugh! After Saber Monarch landed, his internal organs were almost displaced, and his blood was still boiling. He tried his best to stand up, but he still vomited large mouthfuls of blood. The power of Fang Yin's palm strike was enough for him to recuperate for 3 to 5 years. Kongzhu channeled his energy into Saber Monarch's body to help him suppress the boiling blood. He waited until Saber Monarch's emotions calmed down and the purplish-red color on his face gradually disappeared before he withdrew his hand. He walked in front of Fong Yin and looked at him with a sharp gaze. The heart of Taiji has mutated again. This is the light of justice, Fong Yin said shamelessly. The light of justice would naturally only descend on righteous people. People like them who wanted to ambush and kill righteous people were naturally not good people. This was teacher Fong Yan's principle. If I can't beat you, I'll scold you. If I can't scold you, I'll beat you to death. If I can't beat you or scold you, I'll draw circles to curse you. Kongzhu knew that this was not the light of justice. How could there be such a thing in this world? He was clear about Saber Monarch's strength, but Saber Monarch couldn't even slash at him. This filled his heart with uncertainty. In a fight on the battlefield, it was either life or death. He couldn't afford to be careless. Kongzhu stared at Fong Yin with a sharp gaze and said, "This guy is troublesome. Let's attack together." "That's not a good idea, is it?" Xiaomu said. "What's the point of us old people ganging up on a young one? How about I go up and test his strength?" "I don't believe that. Shut up," Kongzhu angrily shouted. He knew that his little brother liked to do things that would attract the attention of others. If it was before, he would let him do as he pleased. A leopard can't change its spots. He knew that his little brother was like this, and he didn't want to force him to do something he didn't want to do. But this time was different. He sensed danger from Fong Yan's body. He had a smile on his face as if nothing had happened. But from the palm he used to attack Saber Monarch earlier, he knew that this brat wanted to kill him. He hated them so much that he wanted to take Saber Monarch's life with that palm. If it were not for the fact that Saber Lord was very powerful and had been accumulating power before Fong Yin struck, Fong Yan's palm strike would have ended his life. "Let's attack together," Kongzhu said resolutely, his tone unquestionable. "Also, little girl, if you don't want to die, you'd better use all of your strength. You should know what your choice represents. You don't have a position, but your family does." "I understand," the black-clothed man said in a low voice. "Attack!" Kongzhu shouted. As he shouted, his body was already dashing towards Fong Yin like a rabbit. He took the lead, waving his hands nonstop. Countless palm shadows appeared in front of him, and the countless palm shadows turned into countless phantoms that were hard to discern with the naked eye. Yama's palm, Ghost palm, roar. As he swung his palm, ghosts wailed and wolves howled. "I'm coming," Xiaomu shouted, attacking Fong Yin from the side. Xiaomu had an intense personality, so the moves he used were also unusually decisive and fierce. Bodhisattva's lowered their eyebrows, while Arhats glared angrily. He punched out, his fist was biting cold and filled with fist intent. Arhat fist. The two brothers surrounded Fong Yin, one in front and one on the left, one soft and one hard. The black-clothed man stood where she was, her beautiful eyes looking at the battle in front of her, hesitating. After thinking for a moment, he finally gritted his teeth and charged toward Fong Yin, who was in the middle of the battle. Her arrival quickly filled up the position on the right, and the three of them formed a simple U-shaped encirclement around Fong Yin. Saber Monarch Luo Jin didn't give up. After taking a few deep breaths, he charged towards Fong Yin from behind with his chopping knife. His body was like a mountain, the tip of his knife rising. The third move of the saber manual, the boning knife. With one swing of the knife, the sky changed color. Surrounded by 4 experts, Fong Yin's body spun wildly like a top. The heart of Tai Chi had already been activated, and the Tai Chi domain had a panoramic view of their attacks. His body was already moving to the extreme. When the attacks from all 4 sides reached him at the same time, Fong Yan's body soared into the air with a whoosh. Whoosh, 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 a strong gust of wind was stirred up by him, like the long tail of a tornado. Fong Yan's body had just leaped up, dodging their first round of attacks, and then he pressed down with lightning speed. He flew above their heads, his legs like spears as he ruthlessly kicked at the top of the heads of the 2 brothers. He wanted to kick a hole through their skulls. Sensing danger, Xiaomu and Kongzhu quickly retreated. Pa, pa. The force from their toes flew to the ground, smashing 2 deep holes in the hard stone ground. The 2 retreated, and the encirclement was immediately disbanded. Fong Yin flew up, and the saber monarch's boning knife followed suit. As Fong Yin descended, the boning knife immediately slashed at his genitals. The butcher dismembering ox technique. Fong Yin avoided the sharp edge of the boning knife. When his body reached a certain height, he kicked at the saber monarch's injured chest. Luo Jin had just been seriously injured, and his body was not as lively as before. Fong Yin's attack was as fast as lightning, and he had no way to dodge. His body was once again swept away by Fong Yin. When Fong Yin landed, only the black-clothed man was left in the battle. Fong Yin had originally wanted to chop at the black-clothed man's neck, but halfway through, he withdrew his hand. When he withdrew his attack, the force from his hand tore off the black-clothed man's black veil. The black veil fluttered, and Fong Yin grabbed it. With his back to the black-clothed man, Fong Yin handed over the black veil in his hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Cover your face again. I don't want to see your face." Chapter 577. A lonely pavilion, a gust of autumn wind. To the left of Single Sword Mountain, there was another perilous peak that stood side by side with Single Sword Peak. It was called Sword Cometh Peak. Sword Cometh Peak was not as tall and straight as the first Sword Peak, nor was it as steep and strange as the first Sword Peak. Therefore, many people would head straight to Single Sword Peak when they arrived at Single Sword Mountain. Very few people would even think of visiting Sword Cometh Peak. Sword Cometh Peak was a natural supporting role, a vassal of Single Sword Peak. However, Sword Cometh Peak was not lonely today, because it also welcomed travelers who knew how to appreciate it. If life is only like the first time we met, why does the autumn wind grieve the painting fan? The heart of an old friend is always changing, but the heart of an old friend is always changing. A young man in a black suit stood at the side of the gazebo, holding a high-powered telescope in his hand. He was looking at the top of One Sword Peak in the distance. He was reciting Nayland Romrua's Ode of Mulan, and it sounded like he was thinking about something else. No one answered, except for the whistling of the autumn wind and the rustling of the grass. Money can't buy a person's heart. The hardest thing to buy is the human heart. It's also the most volatile thing. The man in the suit sighed softly. He handed the binoculars in his hand to an old man in a black tang suit beside him, turned to look at a man in white behind him, and asked, "What do you think? This song is a bit too sad." The white-robed man's face was as clear as jade as he said calmly, "I prefer the lines, 'Friends and relatives in Luoyang ask each other, a heart of ice in a jade pot, a piece of ice heart in the jade pot. How many people are willing to put their hearts in a jade pot?" The man in the suit sighed. "What about you? Is your ice heart in the jade pot?" "Young master, you know the answer," the white-robed man said. "I don't know the answer." The man in the suit shook his head. He glanced at everyone present and said, "The human heart is unpredictable. No matter how good I am at calculating, I can't calculate the human heart. What I want is nothing more than for everyone to work together to do something that will make us stand out from the crowd. Isn't it true that benefits are eternal?" The white-robed man smiled and said, "That is true, but it doesn't sound elegant, does it?" The man in the suit asked, "Young master is wise." "I'm not wise." The suited man shook his head. "I used to think I was smart." There were countless halos above his head, and he did a few things that he felt good about himself. At that time, he felt that he was unparalleled in the world and that nothing could stump him. The riches and honor of the human world are freely available. At this stage, it's very easy for people to lose control, and it's very easy for them to miss a step. Later, I met Fong Yin, a man I had to call an opponent. The slap in the face at the Maple Leaf Club was really memorable. For a long time, there was a bloody taste in my mouth. That slap had completely awakened me. It had pushed me down from midair, letting me know that I wasn't omnipotent and that I could also be knocked down by others. Most importantly, he told me not to underestimate anyone, because there's a saying that goes, "It's better to be safe than sorry." Fong Yin hid in Swallow Dock for 3 years, but I was busy in the outside world for 3 years. Why? To do a few more things, to succeed a few more times because only by doing a lot of successful things would people forget the scene at the Maple Leaf Club. I wanted to wash away the shame. Later, I found out that I was wrong. No matter how many things you did, no matter how many times you succeeded, as long as you met Fong Yin, as long as someone mentioned Fong Yin, they would mention that failure and the fact that you're not as good as Fong Yin. Fong Yin had become a thorn in my side, a deep ravine that I had no choice but to face. So, when Fong Yin came to Huacheng, I also followed him to Huacheng. Young master, Fong Yin is just a grasshopper after autumn. There are only a few days left until autumn. He won't be jumping around for much longer, a man in black said aloud. The suited man smiled silently and said, "See, even you don't believe that we can keep him here tonight?" "Young master, I didn't mean that." The man in black repeatedly denied. He knew that General Jun Xin was gloomy. If he let General Jun Xin bear a grudge against him, he probably wouldn't have a good life in the future. "We'll definitely keep him here tonight. He won't live to see tomorrow." The man in the suit waved his hand and said, "After I arrived at Huacheng, I clashed with Fong Yin a few times. We fought a few times in the open and in the dark. You all know the result. I lost terribly. I'm not as good as Fong Yin." Everyone's expression was ugly. They didn't know how to respond to Jiang Junling's words. Jiang Junling's heart was higher than the sky, and he was arrogant. He said that he was not as good as Fong Yin in front of his subordinates. What was he playing at? He couldn't be thinking of silencing them after saying those words, right? Don't you think it's ridiculous? Jiang Junling pointed at his own head and said, "When a person who only worshipped intelligence and thought that there was nothing that couldn't be solved with intelligence had to place all his hopes on force, it's really ironic. The longer I stay in Huacheng, the more disadvantageous my situation is. Right now, there are all kinds of rumors against me in Yinjing City. They say that I've been imprisoned by Fong Yin in Huacheng and can't advance or retreat. My brother must have done a lot of things behind the scenes." Everyone was silent. This was an internal conflict of the general family. It wasn't something outsiders like them could interfere in. That's why we're gathered here tonight. I don't like to walk at night. But tonight, I ran with you to this bare mountaintop. I thought I was prepared. I thought I prepared well enough. First, I let Senior Martial Addict waste his energy. Then, I sent enough people to ambush him. When he was at his weakest, I gave him a fatal blow. What was that silver light just now? Oh, someone told me that it was the light of Tai Chi. How ironic. His heart of Tai Chi has broken through again. Even the heavens are on his side. I don't believe in Buddha. I don't worship heaven and earth. I only believe in everything that I have. Jiang Junling pointed at his head again. And here, to me, this battle is very crucial, very important. If we win, we will return with honor. If we lose, I will be hidden by the family and become an abandoned pawn. That's why. Jiang Junling bowed deeply to the people around him. Everyone hurriedly moved away. Who would dare to accept a 90-degree bow from this young master? Wouldn't that be shortening their lifespan? If they accept it now, then he might think about it and feel uncomfortable. Who knows? He might give you a hard time. Jiang Junling raised his head. His eyes shined as he looked at everyone. With an extremely serious tone, he said, "Everyone, you are my strongest friends. You're also my last hope. Please lend me your strength. Please lend me your luck. This battle, we will definitely win. We will definitely win." Two young men in black said excitedly. A kind of excited feeling of a warrior dying for a bosom friend spread through their bodies. "We are willing to die for young master." The two silent old men who had been following by the General Ling's side all this while and had cultivated this silent Zen said, because they had not spoken for far too long, their voices were dry and shriveled. However, their sincerity was enough to move one's heart. The white-robed man wore a wide-sleeved robe and held a long sword in his hand as he said with a faint smile, "We await young master's orders." Jiang Junling nodded at everyone before angrily shouting, "Today at this time, we will kill Fong Yin." Crash! Two men in black charged towards the foot of the mountain. Whoosh! The two men in black who had been following closely by Jiang Junling's side continuously flashed, before disappearing into the mountain forest. The long-robed man nodded at Jiang Junling with a faint smile. "Take care, young master." After speaking, he turned around and walked down the mountain. He used the word walk, but his footsteps were as swift as the wind. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of the two men in black. Sword Cometh Peak regained its tranquility once again. Only Jiang Junling was left guarding the old pavilion alone. Jiang Junling used a pair of binoculars to observe the world on the other side, as he softly said, "The saying of Mount Li ends in the middle of the clear night, and the ringing bells of the night reign, do not complain. How is it better to be a man in embroidered robes, to be together like a pair of wings and branches? It's really a sad thing for old friends to meet each other in arms. Cover your face again. I don't want to see your face." To think that Fang Yin would make such a request in the middle of an intense battlefield. Just how ugly and terrifying must his face be to make Fang Yin feel fear? Fang Yin handed the black veil over, but the black-clothed man did not reach out to take it. "You already knew who I was, right?" the man in black asked. His voice was light and contained a little gentleness and coquettishness, like the whispers of a lover being blown over by the wind from afar. "There's no need for anyone I don't know to cover their face. What's the point of covering their face with a veil for someone I know?" Fang Yan's expression twitched as he did his best to suppress the churning anger and sadness in his heart, as well as the tears that threatened to spill out of his eyes. He was a man with a strong will, but when it came to emotions, he was as weak as a child. He did not know how to deal with such a situation. He hoped that these people were all strangers. They were all enemies who wanted to kill him. Only then would he feel at ease and feel that it was only natural. "Yes, how could you not recognize me?" The man in black smiled soundlessly. Her eyes were red as large beads of tears rolled down her cheeks. "You're such a smart person. How could you not guess who I am? Only someone who wants to cover up would do such a stupid thing. I'm not stupid either, but I don't know why, but I still want to cover my face with a black cloth. Because I really don't know how to face you. Not to mention you." Fang Yin gritted his teeth, his fingers deeply digging into the flesh of his palm. His eyes turned blood red, and the hostility in his heart accumulated to the highest point before exploding with a bang. His eyes coldly stared at the man in black, and his words pierced the heart. "Why you?" The heart of Tai Chi was covered in dust, so the Tai Chi realm naturally lost its effect. "Sorry." The tears in the girl's eyes flowed faster and faster. Her voice was choked with sobs as she kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Why must it be you?" Fang Yin looked at her tearful face and said with grief and indignation. He clenched his fists so tightly that his bones crackled. "They already have so many people. Are you still afraid that they won't be able to kill me? Even if you stand with them, even if you're also the mastermind, you hide in Yinjing and don't come, you hide behind a rock and don't show yourself. Even if that's the case, it's fine. Why must you jump out yourself? Why must you let me see your face? Seeing you stand together with those executioners, Fang Yin, I'm sorry," the phoenix sobbed. She didn't know what to say. She had already come this far. What else could she say? She also didn't know what to explain. She had already stabbed him with her sword. What else was there to explain? Some things were done, some things were done, and some things were done. She made her choice, so she and Fang Yin also passed. She had hesitated before because she knew what the consequences of doing so were. She had considered for too long. She had calculated too much. But why did her heart feel so uncomfortable when she faced him? It was like using a knife to cut the heart into pieces, then pouring it into a measuring cup, adding water and ice, and stirring it into juice. Pain, bitterness, coldness. Except for the words, I'm sorry, she had already lost the ability to speak. If you want me to answer, then it should be for you. A clear and elegant voice came over. The voice came first, then a white light flashed. A white figure appeared in front of the two brothers, Kong Zhu and Xiao Mu. The white-robed man first nodded to Kong Zhu and Xiao Mu, then helped the fallen blade Lord Luo Jin up. Luo Jin kept vomiting blood, his face as pale as a ghost. It was clear that his internal injuries were extremely serious. The white-robed man placed one hand on Luo Jin's back, and then a warm current flowed into Luo Jin's body. Luo Jin only felt that his body was very comfortable, as if he was sunbathing. That warm current spread throughout his body, unblocking all the blood vessels and meridians that had been blocked because of his serious injuries. Bai Xiu's hand lightly patted him, and Luo Jin felt a wave of nausea in his chest. He opened his mouth again, wanting to vomit, but nothing came out. Only now did he feel comfortable all over. He felt that the turbid air that had been stuck in his chest for a long time had finally disappeared. "Thank you," Blade Lord Luo Jin said gratefully. On the battlefield of life and death, if someone was willing to lend a helping hand, then the favor was far too great. Perhaps in the future, he would have to take out something even more important to repay the favor. It eats, sleeps, and eats. In the end, it's stabbed through the neck. If the butcher's knife skills are good enough, it won't be a painful death. Look, isn't being a pig very blissful? Why don't you be a pig? Does Swallow Doc know what you're doing? Fang Yin asked. This was the question he was most concerned about and wanted to know the answer to. Phoenix was here, and so was Bai Xiu. Then, who else from Swallow Doc was involved? Most importantly, was Sir involved in this? If Mr. was also involved, was he representing his own position or Swallow Doc's? There were too many questions that needed answers, too many puzzles that needed to be solved. Fang Yin felt like dark clouds were roiling above his head. His world was completely dark. Not a single ray of light could enter. For the first time, Fang Yin felt like his IQ wasn't enough. Those who should know. Those who don't know, Bai Xiu said. He looked at Fang Yin with a smile and said, "What you want to know the most is whether or not Mr. is involved in this plan, right?" Chapter 579. If it was just Bai Xiu, things wouldn't have reached the point of no return. If even the teacher stood on the other side and became the real mastermind behind this sure-kill situation, then things would become confusing and incomparably dangerous. The teacher wasn't just the teacher. He was also Swallow Doc. Swallow Doc was Fang Yin's home. Would even his own family want to kill him? Phoenix could only be counted as half a member of Swallow Doc. Her appearance couldn't represent Swallow Doc's position, but it could represent the Yin family's position. Fang Yin didn't have much contact with the Yin family and had only greeted his parents a few times. They looked cold and unapproachable, so how could they want to kill him? Bai Xiu was a member of Swallow Doc and was even a very important person there. He was a capable candidate to be the next teacher of Swallow Doc. Now that he stood up and expressed his position, was his position also the teacher's position? Bai Xiu understood Fang Yin. Just as he said, this was what Fang Yin was most concerned about. What was the teacher's position? Did the teacher want Fang Yin to die, or did he want Fang Yin to live a life worse than death? Bai Xiu could represent the teacher to a certain extent, but Bai Xiu couldn't represent the teacher. Hearing Bai Xiu's words, Fang Yin said in a low voice, "Yes, this is the question I want to ask. It is also the thing I am most concerned about. With such a big scene tonight, everyone who should have come is here, and those who shouldn't have come are here to join in the fun." Phoenix's expression was extremely sorrowful, and her tears flowed even more happily. She really shouldn't have come. Coming here was asking for abuse. Fang Yin could mock her, scold her, and even kill her, but she could only keep saying sorry to him. Why bother? Fang Yan's eyes were like knives as he stared at Bai Xiu's face. Just like the most famous, if eyes could really kill, Fang Yin would have already chopped Bai Xiu into meat paste and made dumplings. Fang Yin hated Phoenix, but he didn't want to hate Phoenix. Because when he hated the woman he deeply loved, not only did the pain not lessen, but it also made him feel 10 times, 100 times worse than not hating her. Therefore, Fang Yin placed his hatred on Bai Xiu. Bai Xiu, you almost never step out of Swallow Doc, but this time you came all the way to Solitary Sword Mountain to ambush me and take my head. Why? Bai Xiu, if you weren't a dog of the Jiang family, who ordered you to run out and bite people? Bai Xiu, if you weren't a dog of the Jiang family, then who ordered you to run out and bite people? Many years ago, I knew that I wasn't good with words, so I didn't like to talk most of the time, especially to you. Language is also a kind of ability, and I'm not as good as you in this aspect. We're from the same hometown, yet you're not even willing to give me an answer? Fang Yin pointed at the encirclement around him, pointed at Bai Xiu, pointed at Diablo and Xiao Mu, and even pointed at the Blade Lord Luo Jin, who was still holding his saber and maintaining his battle stance. The situation is very clear. Even if the gods come to save me, it will be useless. The current situation is a dead end for me. Bai Xiu, can't you let me die knowing? Fang Yin didn't point at the phoenix. He couldn't bear to look at it, and he didn't dare to. He treated the phoenix as an invisible person, although at this moment his heart was in so much pain that he couldn't breathe. So what? No matter how painful it was, he had to endure it. No matter how cold it was, he had to endure it. His life was more important. I'm not obliged to explain to the dead. That's the king of hell's business. Bai Xiu raised the sword in his hand and said, "My duty is to send you to hell." Fang Yin sneered. Such a line was really uncultured. Who knew where it was plagiarized from? Bai Xiu, you've been waiting for this day for a long time, haven't you? Fang Yin said with a face full of ridicule. You used to be the most popular young hero of Swallow Fort, the focus of everyone's praise. Although Yi Ro has the reputation of being the #1 in the younger generation of the Jianghu, many people always thought that it was because you didn't want to fight with women. Unexpectedly, Fang Yin, was a genius, comprehending the heart of Tai Chi at such a young age. I immediately stole your limelight and glory, becoming the most popular man in Swallow Fort. Your state of mind is out of balance. Jealousy turned to hatred. You wanted to kill me for a long time, right? Come, Bai Xiu. Use your full strength and come at me with your companions. Keep me here so that I won't be able to walk out of solitary Sore Mountain. From now on, you will be the #1 in the younger generation of Swallow Fort, and no one will compete with you. Bai Xiu slowly put down the sword in his hand. He looked at Fang Yin with a serious face and said, "Originally, I didn't want them to accompany me in the attack, because I think it's a bit undignified. No matter what, we're all from Swallow Fort. Even if there's any conflict, it should be solved by us using Swallow Fort's method. That's right." Fang Yin shouted sternly. "Let's go down the mountain, find a tavern, order a few boxes of white wine, and fight to the death." Swallow Fort's way of solving problems was to compete in drinking. For example, Fang Yin and Li Xiaotian had some kind of quarrel, or Fang Yin stole Zhu Zaidan's crocodile bow to hunt for game to ambush the phoenix. Fang Yin's heart ached again. Why was it the phoenix again? Whenever the companions of Swallow Fort encountered any problems that needed to be solved, they would find a place with no one around to compete in drinking. They would bring a few bottles of Shadozi, one for each, and drink to their heart's content. The loser would listen to the winner, and the winner could apologize or continue to curse. Because their alcohol tolerance was not as good as Fang Yin's, Fang Yin would always be the winner. This way of solving problems was surprisingly effective. They were still as close as brothers, and never had any conflicts. Bai Xiu knew that Swallow Fort had this tradition, but he was not one of Fang Yin's companions. He didn't expect Fang Yin to propose such a despicable and shameless plan. If everyone went down the mountain to a tavern, Fang Yin would probably be so far gone that he wouldn't even be able to see his shadow. At that time, forget about killing him. Even if they wanted to scold him, he wouldn't listen. Bai Xiu's expression stiffened slightly. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "I'm afraid I can't agree. If there's alcohol, I don't mind having a drink with you. I'm afraid there won't be a chance in the future." "Bai Xiu, your life is so boring," Fang Yin said viciously. "You used to be so pretentious, and now you're so timid. Are you tired?" "Tired. So tired," Bai Xiu said with a smile. "So I might as well kill someone to relieve my tiredness." As soon as Bai Xiu finished speaking, he raised his sword and prepared to charge at Fang Yin again. Bai Xiu, the phoenix grabbed the corner of Bai Xiu's clothes. Bai Xiu tugged hard, but he couldn't pull it away. Bai Xiu could only turn around and look at the phoenix's tear-stained face. He said softly, "I know what you're thinking, so I didn't want you to know about these dirty things." I don't know where you heard this news, but you actually secretly came to Flower City by yourself. Fong Yin is a smart guy. If you keep reminding him, he might notice something. If you ruin this plan, how are you going to explain it to your family? Why would they let you go? You've already made your choice from the beginning, so why can't you make up your mind at the crucial moment? We are very powerful, and we can change many things, but we can't change fate. The current situation is the fate of you and Fong Yin. Bai Xiao, what's the point of you standing here? You came for him. You want to say goodbye to him. You're afraid that he'll be killed. You always feel that you should see it happen with your own eyes. Even if he dies, he should die in front of your own eyes. But do you know that because you're standing here, the person most likely to kill him is actually you, Bai Xiao? One of the Phoenix's hands tightly gripped Bai Xiao's sleeve, afraid that if she let go, he would attack with his sword. She was very, very sad. She was very, very sad. She was sobbing uncontrollably. She was crying so hard that her entire body was trembling, as if she was about to stop breathing. Bai Xiao once again took out a handkerchief from his pocket and carefully wiped the tears off Phoenix's face. He advised, "Go back. This place isn't suitable for you, Bai Xiao. I'm sorry," Phoenix said in a trembling voice as she threw herself into Bai Xiao's arms. As she spoke, the long sword in her left hand suddenly pierced toward Bai Xiao's abdomen. The long sword didn't pierce through Bai Xiao's abdomen. Instead, Bai Xiao caught it in his hand. A long gash appeared on Bai Xiao's palm by the sharp blade of the sword, and red blood sprayed out like a fountain. No one had expected such a scene to occur. This stinking whore. Xiaomu flew into a rage and cursed angrily. She's actually a spy on Fong Yan's side. They had just fought with Fong Yan and had already figured out Fong Yan's strength, especially that silver arm of light that appeared at the end. It was even more confusing. Bai Xiao was a new force on their side, and also the main force that intercepted Fong Yan. If Bai Xiao was stabbed or killed by Phoenix's sword, how could they complete the task of keeping Fong Yan at Solitary Sword Mountain? Damn. Kongzhu flew into a rage and slapped toward Phoenix's back. Bai Xiao waved his sleeves and dispersed the overlapping palm shadows that Kongzhu had sent over. Saber Monarch's eyes were cold, and he looked thoughtfully at Bai Xiao, who was holding Phoenix in his arms. Bai Xiao held the long sword in one hand and the blade of Phoenix's long sword in the other. He looked at Phoenix tenderly and said, "You don't understand me, but I understand you very well. When you say sorry, it means that you will really do something that will let others down." Chapter 580. You would only take the initiative to get to know someone if you like someone. If you didn't like someone, that person would always be a passerby. You could lie to someone about anything, but loving someone or not was as easy as drinking water. "You don't know me, but I know you very well." Bai Xiao said this in a relaxed and natural manner. But how much hardship and regret did he have in his heart? Phoenix was only Fong Yan's first love, but she was Bai Xiao's girlfriend. His own girlfriend stabbed herself for someone else's boyfriend. Such a thing was rare in this world, right? Fong Yan could only blame Phoenix for being ruthless, because Phoenix had never given him any promises. However, Bai Xiao had the right to reprimand Phoenix for her betrayal. Bai Xiao sighed deeply and said, "Don't ever say sorry to anyone in the future, at least not to me, Bai Xiao." Phoenix was already in tears, and her voice was already starting to hiccup. Everything that she had experienced today was a nightmare to her. The cruelest and most heartless nightmare. However, even so, she still didn't want to wake up, because no matter how terrifying a dream was, it was ultimately a dream. Everything that happened in the dream was fake and illusory. If it was reality, there would be blood and deaths. She couldn't accept such an outcome. Although she had thought about it 100 times, made up her mind 100 times, and decided to take on everything 100 times, wasn't the reason why there were 100 times because she hadn't thought it through, hadn't made up her mind, and couldn't take on everything? You rushed over for him. No matter how much your heart ached, he already understood your feelings. Bai Xiao hugged Shangxin's body tightly with one arm and said in a calm and gentle voice, "When you stabbed me, the best place to stab me was actually my heart. However, you only stabbed my stomach, This proved that you didn't want to kill me, but only wanted to injure me. A hint of bitterness appeared on Bai Xiu's face as he said, "For so many years, everyone thought that I had won. They thought that I was the winner on the battlefield of love. However, I knew that I had lost, and Fong Yin was the real winner. Even though everyone knew that you were my girlfriend, you had never held my hand when we were alone. It's only when we meet Fong Yin that you take the initiative to hold my hand. What do you want to prove? You want to tell Fong Yin to give up on me, that the person I like is Bai Xiu. You're also telling yourself to stop letting your imagination run wild. The person you're going to choose is Bai Xiu. You're just doing that to strengthen your belief in Fong Yin and yourself. Why is it necessary to be firm? If you like it, then you like it. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. Why do you need to be firm? Because in your heart, you still care more about Fong Yin. Although because of your family's standpoint, you can only exclude him. But have you ever thought about what I am? What am I? Bai Xiu gently kissed Phoenix's black hair fluttering in the wind and said, "Am I also a proud person? I also have the self-esteem of a man. The time I liked the most was when I walked shoulder to shoulder with you by the Stone River. The time I felt the most sad was when you suddenly ran over and held my hand. Because I knew that Fong Yin must be coming. Fong Yin must be coming. I don't have any experience in love, and I don't know what love is. But I read in a book that when you are with the person you like the most, she is your independent kingdom. Your line of sight is imprisoned by her, and you can't come into contact with anything outside. My eyes only have you, and your eyes are always the first to discover traces of Fong Yin. My martial arts are better than yours. If someone else comes close, shouldn't I be the first to discover it? What I'm grateful for is that your sword didn't stab my heart in the end. This is the best reward for my efforts, right?" Bai Xiu, Phoenix's legs were weak, and her body softly leaned against Bai Xiu's chest. The sword in her hand couldn't stab down, nor could it fall. Her hand holding the sword was shaking, but because Bai Xiu's hand was holding the sword, one end of the sword was still fixed in Phoenix's palm. Is it loyalty to your family or loyalty to your own feelings? Everyone will be in a dilemma when they encounter this kind of problem. Is it disloyal, unfilial, or heartless? It's hard for me to decide when I encounter this kind of thing. No matter what choice you make, it's wrong. You coming here is a mistake. Bai Xiu lightly patted Phoenix's shoulder and took the sword from her trembling hand. His eyes were gentle, and his voice was filled with infinite affection as he said, "You're too tired. Go back and rest well. When you wake up, everything will be over." "Bai Xiu, don't." Phoenix hugged Bai Xiu tightly, her voice sorrowful and pleading. Bai Xiu smiled bitterly and said, "You see, you're making things difficult for me again. I've never refused any of your requests, but this time, I can only disappoint you." Bai Xiu pushed Phoenix's body away from him, looked at Phoenix's collapsed body on the ground, and said, "Go back. Don't let me see you cry, and don't let him see you cry. You look very ugly when you cry." Phoenix shook her head. She didn't want to leave, but if she didn't leave, what else could she do? She watched as they plotted step by step to lure Fong Yin into the insect, but she couldn't bear to see him die. She wanted to stab Bai Xiu so that Fong Yin could escape with less resistance, but her actions were seen through by Bai Xiu. Not only did she fail to save Fong Yin, but she also hurt this man who had wholeheartedly loved and cared for her for many years. And Xiao, she roared angrily in her heart. She felt that the owner of this name was the world's stupidest, most selfish, and most despicable woman. She hated herself, a deep-rooted hatred. While Bai Xiu was pacifying Phoenix, the other generals by Jiang Junling's side had all arrived. Two tall men in suits stood there like two towering mountains. Two old men in gray robes with shriveled cheeks who didn't say a word. The two brothers Kongzhu and Xiao Mu, whose strength seemed to have not been depleted, and the saber monarch Luo Jin, who had recovered his energy for a short period of time and was once again on guard, ready to enter the battle at any time. These people surrounded Fong Yin in the middle, forming a human wall that could both attack and defend. Bai Xiu's hand was bleeding profusely. He used the handkerchief he had used to wipe Phoenix's tears to simply bandage his hand. His movements were simple and practiced. It seemed that he had done this kind of thing many times before. After the wound on his hand was tightly bandaged, Bai Xiu once again raised his long sword and looked at Fang Yin, who was in the middle of the battle, and asked with a smile, "How much have you recovered?" Bai Xiu's guess was correct. Fang Yin was indeed resting. He was resting when he was talking to Bai Xiu. He was resting when he was distressed by Phoenix. And he was resting when Phoenix stopped Bai Xiu from comforting Phoenix. Just now, in the battle with martial maniac Hou Zhendong at the summit of Single Sword Peak, Fang Yin had expended too much energy and essence. Martial maniac Hou Zhendong was one of the world's top experts, and one of Hua Xia's 7 maniacs. His entire body was covered in cracks, and it was true that Fang Yin felt a great deal of pressure. If Fang Yin hadn't won through trickery, the two of them might have fought to the death. But even though Fang Yin had won in the end, his energy was almost completely depleted. Thus, he needed energy. If he wanted to break out of the encirclement, he needed an intense battle. At the very least, these people in front of him wouldn't let him go so easily. 70%, Fang Yin said. His essence, qi, and spirit had only recovered to 40%. Just now, when he received Saber Lord's firewood cleaver, the silvery white crystals that appeared out of nowhere had almost drained all the energy in his body. Even if Fang Yin had the aid of the Taiji heart, which could speed up his body's recovery, he had only recovered 40% of his energy. Up until now, he had only recovered 40% of his previous strength and will. His body was empty, and his will was exhausted. How could he win this battle? Of course, he wouldn't tell Bai Xiu the truth. Bai Xiu was a narcissist. Why would he ask such an idiotic question? Bai Xiu smiled and nodded. 70% is just right. You can kill me without letting others think that you're bullying me. 70% is indeed just right. Fang Yin sneered. That's right. Bai Xiu nodded. My opponent is too weak. He's not worth my attack. Fang Yin was furious. He glared at Bai Xiu fiercely and said, "What right do you have to say that I'm not worth your attack? Come, let's fight one-on-one." He pointed at Kongzhu, Xiao Mu, and the others and said, "None of you attack. I want to see how strong this idiot is. In my opinion, he's the weakest among you all." No one answered. No one left the encirclement. Fang Yin sighed in his heart. The times had changed. The people's intelligence had increased. There were fewer idiots. Even the performance of swindlers wasn't as good as before. Bai Xiu calmly looked at everyone and loudly said, "Everyone, time is of the essence. Let us join hands and kill this brat." "That's how it should be," Kongzhu agreed. "This brat has picked up a great bargain. Being surrounded by so many of us is a great blessing in life. Let's begin." "No more chatter," the bulky black-clothed man roared. "Shameless," Fang Yin cursed. "Thank you." Before Bai Xiu finished speaking, he and his sword had already disappeared from their original positions. Before he could even reappear, a silvery white sword ray descended from the sky. Like a bolt of lightning, it enveloped the space above Fang Yin's head. Rumble, lightning, thunder. A single strike of the sword could cause lightning. This was the supreme secret of swordsmanship. Therefore, Fang Yin asked Hu Zaidan and Li Xiaotian to keep spreading rumors in Swallow Dock, saying that Bai Xiu had used shameless means to snatch the phoenix from him, and that he had tried to attack Yi Ro's breasts when he was fighting with her. As a result, Yi Ro had beaten him badly and made him beg for mercy. Bai Xiu looked like a gentleman on the surface, but in fact he was a despicable, shameless, and obscene hooligan. Although the fabricated words were a little exaggerated, it still attracted a lot of hatred for Bai Xiu. Yi Ro was the goddess of Swallow Dock at that time. The goddess was there for everyone to look up to. It was wrong of you to reach out and touch her. Bai Xiu's sword did not rise or fall. He was elegant and unrestrained, and his movements were unpredictable. You couldn't see him make a move, and suddenly his sword flew over. You also couldn't see the blade of his sword, and you didn't know whether the long sword in his hand was stabbing your skull, eyes, nose, mouth, throat, or chest, or... any other important body part. There was a flash of lightning like a long snake, and there was a roar like thunder. Rumble. The long snake seemed to have grown eyes, and it circled above Fong Yan's head. Countless cyclones pressed down on Fong Yan's head. Fong Yan felt the air around him being sucked out, and even breathing became difficult. Hiss! The long snake in the cyclone sprang out, opened its bloody mouth, and tore at Fong Yan's head. It looked like it was going to bite off Fong Yan's head. Whoosh! Fong Yan used the heart of Tai Chi and forcibly broke out of the cyclone's lock. He took a step to the left and then rushed to the right. Pa! The cyclone smashed into the stones on the ground, and the stones were smashed into pieces, and a deep pit appeared in the ground. Bai Xiu's attack missed, and he didn't give Fong Yan the slightest chance to breathe. His figure finally appeared, right in front of Fong Yan. The sword in his hand swung upwards, and he directly struck Fong Yan's crotch. Sword chi overflowed, and thunder rumbled. This strike wasn't as dazzling as the first strike, but it was even more majestic. There was no lightning, but there was a hissing flame. There was no thunder, but there was a muffled roar, as if it came from the 9 heavens above. Thunderclap, sword covers the moon. Damn, Fong Yan roared in his heart. The thunderclap sword brought along countless cyclones, and they were so fast that they obscured his vision, making it difficult for him to distinguish the sword's style and angle with his naked eye. If this strike landed, Fong Yan would be cut in half from his crotch. Fong Yan didn't want to die, and he didn't want to be dismembered. The injury of his first girlfriend, the killing of his rival from the same village, this meticulously designed sure-kill situation, and the hidden hands behind the scenes. Fong Yan was filled with hatred for everything that had happened to him. The Taiji core still maintained its frenzied spinning, and it hadn't stopped even now. As Fong Yan's hatred soared, the hostility around the Taiji core began to gather again. They were repelled and kicked out by the Taiji core, but they didn't want to show weakness and continued to invade the Taiji core. Ice and fire couldn't fuse, and good and evil couldn't coexist. As soon as the hostility neared the Taiji core, it was immediately kicked away by the pure Taiji core. When it neared again, it was kicked away again and again, like a moth flying into a flame. Whoosh! When he tried again, a trace of hostility was actually sucked in by the Taiji core cyclone. That hostility was very small, but it was extremely conspicuous in the Taiji core that was filled with pure energy. It was like a sesame seed on a white bread or a mole on a beauty's face. It was easy to overlook and easy to remember. The Taiji core, which had been humiliated, spun even faster, like an enraged wild dog. Like a madman, it roared and bared its fangs, wanting to attack the enemy. It wouldn't stop until the enemy was dead. Fong Yan's eyes couldn't see, but he could use the Taiji realm to find the trajectory of Bai Xiu's thunderclap sword. Fong Yan found the thunderclap sword, found the lightning snake that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, but didn't make any sound, like it was trapped in a glass bottle and couldn't escape. Fong Yan used the most magical and ingenious drunken crane riding the wind. As his body leaned forward, he reached out to grab his sword. He wanted to neutralize the power of the thunderclap sword, then break into Bai Xiu's inner courtyard and hit his heart. SSSSS. Got it. Fong Yan was overjoyed. He felt the hot sword blade. The blade was boiling hot because it had been infused with too much energy, as if it had just been taken out of a furnace. Fong Yan first used the Taiji dispel word formula to neutralize the power of the thunderclap sword. Then, he used the Taiji absorb word formula and entangle word formula at the same time. After flipping his wrist dozens of times, he successfully snatched the thunderclap sword from Bai Xiu's hand, a perfect empty-handed snatch of a white blade. Although he felt that something wasn't right, his brain was still driven and overshadowed by the strong desire to win. Fong Yan's body still maintained a charging posture. The sword in his hand turned around, preparing to stab Bai Xiu's chest and give him a fatal blow. Blood. Blood. Only blood could extinguish the hatred in his heart. Only blood could cover up the violent energy that was about to burst out of his body. Fang Yin wanted to kill. Fang Yin stepped on drunken crane riding the wind, one hand holding the unfettered palm, the other holding the limitless sword, and charged at Bai Xiu like a mad dog. He wanted to kill Bai Xiu, just like how Bai Xiu wanted to kill him. At the same time, Kongzhu's Yama palm slapped toward Fang Yan's left side with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The palm shadows were vague, like a dream or illusion. It was difficult to distinguish between real and fake, and it was difficult to dodge. Xiumu had a bad temper. Although he was the first to charge out, and the second person to attack Fang Yan after Bai Xiu, his brother beat him to it. This made Xiumu lose face, and he cursed and swore, but no one knew what he was saying. But he clenched his fists, and his fists suddenly turned scarlet red. After expanding several times, he suddenly punched toward Fang Yan's back. Arhut, subduing demons. The two old consecrators who had accompanied Jiang, Junling all year round also moved. Their faces were so shriveled and old, but their speed was so fast and ghostly, and their moves were so deep and majestic. The two of them worked together and attacked at the same time. One used chess pieces. 9 black chess pieces, 9 white chess pieces. The 18 chess pieces lined up in the air in the shape of a 3, covering more than 160 acupoints on Fang Yan's body. The other person held a copper plate in his hand, which was used to hold the chess pieces. The plate flew out of his hand, broke through the airflow, and started to spin. Then, with a whistling sound, it smashed toward the lower half of Fang Yan's body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the plate spun, it emitted a righteous and grand Buddhist sound. Countless buzzing sounds came together, like the voice of an enlightened monk who was chanting Amitabha at lightning speed. Every time the copper plate spun, it was exactly a complete Amitabha chant, shattering one's fighting spirit and breaking one's state of mind. The two men in suits, who were as tall as hills, also attacked. Their speed could not keep up with the others, so they could only take out weapons from their pockets. Yes, they had brought weapons. Guns. 2 black pistols. This was a collision between ancient martial arts experts, a fight between energies. There were also firearms. This was a song of ice and fire. Chapter 582. The gun was called Proud World, an ace-calibrated pistol produced in Russia. Proud World was originally the standard gun for members of the Russian royal family. Later, when the royal family suffered a disaster, the technology to make Proud World pistols also spread to the outside world. It became the pistol of choice for black market assassins. Every gun was handmade, precisely calibrated, and could be modified according to the customer's requirements. Of course, the price was not cheap. Each gun was worth tens of thousands of gold. They pulled off the safety of the gun and began to search for Fang Yan's body that had already become a blur. At any time, a destructive bullet could be shot out. Fang Yan was surrounded by several experts and attacked by a group of people. However, Fang Yan did not care about his surroundings. He wanted to stab Bai Xiu. He must stab Bai Xiu this time. Infinitely close. Fang Yan held the thunderclap sword and stabbed toward Bai Xiu's heart. As long as he stabbed down, Bai Xiu's heart would be pierced. Moreover, the true qi on the blade would blast his heart into a pile of unmanageable meat paste. Goodbye. Bai Xiu's lips squirmed. Although he did not make a sound, Fang Yan knew that he wanted to say this word. Goodbye? Why goodbye? Yes, goodbye indeed. After Fang Yan's sword slashed down, he and Bai Xiu would never meet again. But shouldn't he be the one saying this? Fang Yan was very angry and expressed his strong dissatisfaction with Bai Xiu's act of stealing his lines. When they said goodbye, their bodies were about to collide with each other. Bai Xiu's face had a smile of relief, and a smile of success. I've been tricked. Fang Yan was shocked. He finally knew what was wrong. It should not be so easy. Bai Xiu's strength was not so easy to neutralize. Bai Xiu's thunderclap sword was not so easy to take away. He relied on the heart of Tai Chi and thought that he could see all the trajectories of his sword. But how could Bai Xiu be so easy to defeat? He resisted with all his might, but secretly left a backup plan. It was to give Fang Yan a fatal blow at this moment. Fang Yan understood. However, it was already too late. Lightning flashed in Bai Xiu's hand. It turned out that Bai Xiu had purposely let Fang Yin snatch the thunderclap sword, and used his palm to receive the sword chi contained within the thunderclap sword. Fang Yin manipulated the white lightning and fiercely stabbed towards Fang Yin's chest. Chi. The sound of the sword, chi cutting through flesh, could be heard. There was also the smell of burning clothes and the smell of oil after the flesh was cooked. When Bai Xiu stabbed the entire lightsaber into Fang Yan's chest, their bodies quickly overlapped and collided heavily. Bang! Just as Fang Yan's body was about to be sent flying, Bai Xiu pulled him back. Fang Yin endured the pain in his chest and wanted to stab the thunderclap sword into Bai Xiu's body according to his original plan. Whoosh! Bai Xiu flicked his wrist, and the thunderclap sword leaped into his hand as if it had a life of its own. Fang Yin's strength had been greatly reduced in the battle with martial fanatic, and had also repeatedly fought with Sword Monarch, Kong Zhu, and the others. His spirit had been greatly reduced, and he had not recovered until now. In terms of strength, he was no match for Bai Xiu at his peak. Whoosh! Bai Xiu flicked his wrist and drew out 7 fiery red sword flowers. The 7 sword flowers flickered with dazzling light, illuminating the faces of the people around them of all shapes and sizes. 7 flowers with 1 sword, a Sword Dao Grandmaster. Bai Xiu is so young, yet he already has the cultivation of a Sword Dao Grandmaster. The gray-robed man in the distance was full of amazement. With an appreciative smile, he said, "From this, it can be seen that he is indeed extremely talented in Sword Dao. A great teacher produces a great disciple. A disciple taught by a teacher naturally won't be too bad." For some reason, seeing Bai Xiu trick Fang Yin and stab the thunderclap sword into Fang Yan's body, martial fanatic felt very uncomfortable. It was as if the sword had been stabbed into his body. Although at the very beginning, he was the primer in this sure-kill situation, the most crucial figure. Just now, in order to complete the mission, he had battled with Fang Yin at the top of One Sword Peak, exhausting a lot of Fang Yan's energy. However, this did not hinder his appreciation and love for Fang Yin. If the two of them fought fairly, I don't think Fang Yin would lose. I had already used up 60 to 70% of Fang Yan's strength. After that, he was besieged by several experts and betrayed by his former lover. His body and morale were at their lowest. Otherwise, just the Taiji light he displayed earlier would be enough to beat Bai Xiu into a pile of dog shit. You should know that the Taiji light is rare for hundreds of years. But in the past 100 years, Bai Xiu was not the only one to use the thunderclap sword well. Even teacher is better than him. The gray-robed man heard the contempt in martial fanatic's words and said with a smile, "Why? Do you want to stand up for that kid?" "I still feel that it's unfair." "Fair? Is there such a thing as fairness in this world? I taught you the fairy scattering flowers, but I didn't teach it to anyone else. Isn't this unfair to others? Also, you guys underestimate Bai Xiu's ability to hide and endure. The focus of the thunderclap sword is not the sword, but the thunder. The lightning after the thunder. In the fight, just now, Fang Yin was not prepared for this move. It can be seen that Bai Xiu had never used it when fighting others. Or rather, all the opponents who saw him using the sword were killed by him. Is a young man who is brave, cunning, and able to keep a low profile not worthy of our nurturing and love? The gray-robed man glanced at martial fanatic and said, "I understand how you feel. It is indeed a little sad to witness the fall of a heaven's favorite, but we have long let go of matters of life and death. Advancing in the path of martial arts, stepping into another world, this is what we seek. Knowing the truth in the morning, one can die without regrets. Furthermore, the winner is the king, the loser is the bandit. Today's outcome has already been decided. There is nothing to be regretful about." Fang Yin was a genius. However, in this battle against Bai Xiu, he was ultimately killed by the other party. He is not as good as Bai Xiu. Why? Martial fanatic was unwilling to accept this. What happened back then? Why did you have to go this far? Not only what happened back then, but also what's happening now, the gray-robed man coldly laughed. Who told him to be a member of the Fong clan? Who told him to be Mo Qingdi's disciple? Who told him to be Fong Yin? I'm just afraid it's too much, martial fanatic sighed. Fong Yin was stabbed in the chest, spitting out blood. That sword had pierced through his body, and it had also drained the strength from his body. His body softly leaned against Bai Xiu's chest. The two of them were like a couple snuggling up to each other. Bai Xiu raised his wrist. The thunderclap sword in his hand was about to stab into Fong Yan's back. Sha! The clear sound of flesh being cut was heard. Blood splattered everywhere. It splashed onto Fong Yan's face, as well as Bai Xiu's face. Bai Xiu was a bit unruly, but this time he didn't dodge. Bai Xiu's sword stabbed halfway, only leaving a small tip. Bai Xiu wanted to exert more force, but couldn't stab any further. Why are you doing this? Bai Xiu asked with a sorrowful expression. You know what you're doing. You're making things very difficult for me. Don't kill him. Phoenix's voice was firm. If you want to kill me. Phoenix used her arm to block the tip of the sword. Her right arm was pierced through by the thunderclap sword. Bai Xiu held the thunderclap sword's hilt in his hand. The tip of the sword pierced through Phoenix's arm. The sharp silver tip glinted coldly. Blood dripped along the lines of the blade. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. Finally, the blood dripped faster and faster, forming a thin red spring. The spring of blood flowed from Fong Yan's back. All of the blood from Phoenix's body dripped onto Fong Yan's body, soaking his clothes and finally merging with Fong Yan's body. And Xiao, Bai Xiu's handsome face twitched slightly, his voice sorrowful. This is a war. I know, this is a war. Phoenix's face had a sorrowful smile. You won. You are the victor of this war, so I can only ask you, please don't kill him. That's impossible. Bai Xiu wanted to press the sword in his hand down. Phoenix took a step forward, pressing her back against Fong Yan's. Then, she pressed her chest against the tip of the sword that had pierced through her arm. If Bai Xiu wanted to stab Fong Yan to death, he could only continue to push the sword down, continue to pierce through Phoenix's arm, pierce through Phoenix's body, and only then could the sword pierce through Fong Yan's heart from the back. Very difficult, and a very long process. The muscles on Bai Xiu's face began to twitch, his voice filled with uncontrollable rage. And Xiao, this is your decision. You are willing to die for him? I didn't die for him, Phoenix said. If you don't kill me, I won't die, but if you kill me, I'll die. How could you do such a thing? How could you be so selfish? Bai Xiu's patience was extremely strong, but at this moment, he was also tempted by this crazy woman to go on a killing spree. You know I can't kill you. I know. Phoenix's voice was filled with apology. So, I can only beg you like this, let him go. You've already won. That's impossible. I can't let him go. Then just kill me, Phoenix said. She looked at the sword in Bai Xiu's hand with her eyes that were red and swollen from crying and said, You only need to gently push the thunderclap's sword down. Kill me. And then kill him. You bitch. Bai Xiu wanted to curse, wanted to call Phoenix a bitch, but the words couldn't come out no matter how hard he tried. He had never cursed anyone. He had never cursed Phoenix, and he would never curse Phoenix. After taking a few deep breaths, he did his best to suppress the ruthlessness in his heart and coldly said, Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? If you kill me, it'll be a kind of, Phoenix said with a smile. At least, the two of us will die together. This way, he won't be able to escape. When I was alive, I didn't get this kind of treatment. Chapter 583. The person I love the most hurts me the most. I don't have the right to choose. Tightly close the door to my heart, leaving behind a moment of tenderness. I'm afraid there's still a next life. Just like Zhang Yuxing's song, the person I love the most hurts me the most. If the person who attacked wasn't Bai Xiu, if the person begging wasn't Phoenix, how could such a painful and tangled scene have happened? Bai Xiu loved Phoenix, and it was because of this deep love that he was heartbroken by Phoenix's choice at this moment. Phoenix knew that Bai Xiu loved her, and it was because she knew he loved her that she made such a crazy decision. Either release Fong Yin or kill her and Fong Yin together. Good people are human. Bad people are human. Good people have feelings. Bad people have feelings. Good people will be sad. Bad people will be sad. At this moment, how cruel was this for Bai Xiu? Bai Xiu raised his sword, but he couldn't stab it down, using the thunderclap sword to pierce the chest of the girl he liked. If he did such a thing, he would probably never be able to forgive himself. It would become a demon in his heart, and he would never be able to make any progress on the path of martial arts for the rest of his life. Letting Fang Yin go and helping Phoenix was equivalent to failing the mission. However, to kill Fang Yin, he had to kill Phoenix first, and Bai Xiu wasn't willing to bear such a result. With no choice, Bai Xiu was faced with a dilemma. The situation changed in an instant, blinding the old eyes of Kong Zhu, Xiu Mu, and the others. While Fang Yin and Bai Xiu were fighting fiercely, Kong Zhu used his King of Hell Palm. The shadows of the palms flickered, and a cold wind blew. He struck out 81 palms in a row, each one aimed at vital acupoints on Fang Yan's body. However, before his palms could touch Fang Yan's body, Fang Yin was already lying in Bai Xiu's body. This was the difference in realm. Fang Yin and Bai Xiu exchanged a few quick blows. When Bai Xiu delivered the thunderclap sword to Fang Yan's hand and received the thunderclap sword energy that pierced through Fang Yan's body, Diabolo's move had just begun to show its power. In other words, Fang Yin and Bai Xiu's speed were several times faster than the others. Others could strike 3 times in a second, but the two of them could strike 30 times. However, when they hit the spot where Fang Yin was standing, all they could hurt was an afterimage. Xiu Mu's Arhut, subduing Demon Fist, also struck out at the same time. Fiery red clouds tore through the space, burning the air until it sizzled. The 18 chess pieces kept changing shapes in the air and finally turned into a pair of flying wings. Their wings flapped towards Fang Yan's Tianhai, Qitu, Lingshu, Yuhai, and other major acupuncture points. But by the time they landed, Fang Yan's body had already changed countless times. The chess piece would cut through the air and hit a tree trunk or a rock. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The chess piece passed through the tree trunk and continued to fly, disappearing into the rock. Everything was settled when the two men in black caught Fang Yan's body with their proud spears and aimed at Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan had already collapsed weakly on top of Bai Xiu's body. The proud spears didn't fire any bullets. In the eyes of the two big men in black, Fang Yan had completely lost the ability to fight. There was no point in firing any more bullets. Moreover, the proud spear's bullets had extremely strong piercing abilities. If they pierced through Fang Yan's head, it would be a matter of course. If they accidentally pierced through Bai Xiu's body as well, then they would have to bear the consequences when they returned. The two men in black looked at each other and put away the proud spears in their hands. Obviously, Bai Xiu had already taken control of the situation. What they needed to do was to witness Bai Xiu's victory. They were also a little stunned in their hearts. They didn't expect Bai Xiu, this pretty boy, to be so skilled. They were all hardcore confidants of Jiang Junling and knew that Jiang Junling usually thought highly of himself and rarely really paid attention to anyone. When they saw Jiang Junling treat Bai Xiu with great courtesy, they were still a little unconvinced. They felt that the young master was being unfair to them. From the looks of it, the general's order was still very meaningful. Kong Zhu stopped moving and didn't attack Fang Yin for no reason. Although Xiu Mu was full of unwillingness, he could only vent his anger on the rocks and trees under his feet. One of the old men in black robes put away his copperplate, and the other old man in black robes also stopped waving his chess pieces that could take someone's life. Everyone stopped and waited for Bai Xiu to end this battle. Everything would be over with just a light strike of the sword. Bai Xiu was the final victor, and this glory belonged to him alone. For Bai Xiu, this test had only just begun. He couldn't stab that sword. He could kill Fang Yin, but he couldn't kill Phoenix, the woman he deeply loved. "This is the last time," Bai Xiu said in a low voice. "Are you going to let him go?" Phoenix asked with a face full of surprise. "This is the last time I'll allow you to use this method to force me," Bai Xiu said. "If a man wants to do something, a woman shouldn't interfere. That will make things difficult for the man. Although I like you very much, You can't use my love for you to threaten me. This makes me feel like a pitiful person. I'm sorry, Phoenix said with teary eyes. She knew that she had let down Fang Yin, and even more so, Bai Xiu. Her choice had hurt two people at the same time, one to the point of death, and the other to a life worse than death. See, you're saying sorry again, Bai Xiu smiled bitterly. Looks like you want to do something that will let me down again. As Bai Xiu spoke, he suddenly pulled out the long sword in his hand. Whoosh! The long sword brought out a flower of blood. The hole in Phoenix's arm was no longer blocked, and blood gushed out even more wildly. The blood splattered, staining Bai Xiu's clothes and Fang Yan's pale cheeks. Because of the excessive blood loss, Phoenix's body was getting weaker and weaker. When the long sword was pulled out of her arm, it also drained the remaining strength in her body. Her knees gave way, and she almost fell to the ground. But she held on. Fang Yan was not out of danger, and Fang Yan's life was still uncertain, so she couldn't faint and definitely couldn't die. Bai Xiu. Phoenix panicked. Don't! Bai Xiu pulled out the long sword and had the chance to stab Fang Yan again. She couldn't let Bai Xiu hurt Fang Yan. She couldn't let Bai Xiu stab Fang Yan to death. Phoenix's arm was in so much pain that she couldn't lift it, so she could only use her body, her full chest, to take the initiative to receive Bai Xiu's Thunderclap sword. If Thunderclap was stained with her blood, Bai Xiu wouldn't be able to let it drink Fang Yan's blood, right? At least, she created a chance for Fang Yan. Fang Yan's body leaned weakly against Bai Xiu's chest, and it was precisely because of this that he could still stand after enduring Bai Xiu's murderous sword aura. Fang Yan's eyes were tightly shut, and the strength in his body had been drained. Consecutive battles, one conspiracy after another, had exhausted him both physically and mentally. What Bai Xiu stabbed into Fang Yan's body wasn't a long sword, but a sword aura that carried the power of thunder and lightning. The sword aura exploded inside his body, and his 5 viscera and 6 bowels and other vital organs were seriously damaged. His eyes were drowsy. He opened them again and again, and then closed them again and again. If he could die like this, it would be a kind of release. However, Fang Yin couldn't die. Although his body had no strength, although he couldn't open his eyes, his mind was still clear. He knew what was happening outside, and he could clearly hear the conversation between Bai Xiu and Phoenix, because he was so close to them, lying in Bai Xiu's arms and then back to back with Phoenix. Their bodies were so close, but their hearts were so far apart. That idiot woman, that stupid woman, that selfish and unafraid of death, that cunning woman who was brave enough to sacrifice herself. That woman whom he hated to the bone, that unforgettable first love. This was a war, but she chose him at the end of it. She put her back to him, used his arm to block Bai Xiu's Thunderclap sword, and said, "If you kill me, it will be a kind of help." She wanted to die with him, and she was willing to die with him. But why? Because of love? If it was because of love, why wasn't she willing to accept his feelings in the beginning? If it was because of love, why didn't she warn him in advance? If it was because of love, why did she participate in this sure-kill situation? Did she know that her appearance had already killed him once? It should be because of love. If not, why would she do such a thing to protect him? It should be love, right? If it wasn't love, why would she accompany an insignificant person to die? She loved me. Until now, Fang Yin couldn't believe this fact. Bai Xiu, let Fang Yin go. Let Fang Yin go, Phoenix cried bitterly. This time, I'm sorry. I'm willing to use everything I have to make it up to you. Don't you want to marry me? Let's go back and get married, find a place with no one, and live in seclusion. If you like Swallow Fort, we'll live in Swallow Fort for the rest of our lives and never come out again. Bai Xiu, let's not get involved in these things. Let's go together. You stupid woman, what kind of phoenix are you? You're just a stupid bird. Why do you have to use my things to make a deal with me? Don't you know, the more you act like this, the more I want to kill him. Bai Xiu's expression became even more ferocious as he fiercely said, I just said, that was the last time I'll allow you to use such a method to force me. As Bai Xiu spoke, he suddenly thrust his sword towards Fang Yan's back. Phoenix didn't hesitate and forcefully thrust her chest forward. Bai Xiu's eyes turned cold. The sword in his hand didn't show any signs of stopping, but instead sped up again, stabbing towards Phoenix's chest. He wanted to pierce Phoenix with one strike. Then he would stab Fong Yin behind Phoenix to death. One sword, two birds. Two stupid birds. Chapter 584. When the Snake Lord opened his eyes, the world in front of him was dark. It was a moonless night. Even the farthest star in the sky was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps it couldn't bear to see the tragedies in this world, so it closed its eyes early to rest. The Snake Lord struggled, wanting to move his hands and feet, but he couldn't move his hands, nor could he move his feet. His body was poisoned, and it was a poison that he couldn't cure. How could the Snake Lord be poisoned? What a joke. Of course, the Snake Lord didn't laugh. He wanted to cry. He couldn't understand why his sister would treat him like this. Also, was that girl really his sister? The sister who wholeheartedly attached herself to him and took care of him? The sister who blinked her big eyes and said, "Big brother, it's time to eat." Just as he was thinking about this, a pair of bright eyes appeared in front of him. The pair of eyes rolled around, pure and bright, seemingly without any impurities. The Snake Lord's withered yellow eyes fixed on her, looking at the pair of eyes that he remembered deeply. Yes, these were his sister's eyes. In the past, he also found it very strange. He and his sister ate the same food, did the same things, and spent day and night with all kinds of poisonous snakes and animals. Why were his eyes black and yellow, and the whites of his eyes were bloodshot? They were like the eyes of snake. But his sister's eyes were black and white. Her pupils were as black as ink, and the whites of her eyes were as white as the first snow. He could accept that the heavens were unfair to him. Even Mother Nature was so biased that it made people feel bitterly disappointed. The Snake Lord also wanted to be a quiet, handsome man. The Snake Lord opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Do you want to talk?" the owner of the eyes asked. The Snake Lord didn't answer. He didn't need to answer such a question. The poison you were poisoned with is called red eccentric. It's made from the gallbladder of a red eccentric. The owner of the eyes explained softly, "You told me about this poison. You should have felt it. After being poisoned by red eccentric, your whole body is paralyzed like a vegetable. Except for the brain, the rest of your body can't move, including your eyes." The Snake Lord's eyes were still staring at his sister, staring at the family that he missed day and night. The owner of the eyes looked at him for a while, sighed softly, and said, "I know what you want to say." There was anger in the Snake Lord's eyes. He wanted to make the corners of his mouth twitch to express his disdain. However, he couldn't even do such a trivial action. How could she know what he wanted to say? Even he didn't know what he would say. So how could she know? Could she understand the pain and helplessness of watching one's only family being kidnapped and ordered around by others? Could she understand the indignation and humiliation of begging for a trade when one's life was about to end after failing a mission? Could she understand the cruelty and yearning of crying and begging her opponent to take her snake's eye and turn her into a snake slave without freedom and soul? The king of the snake species was still a king. Which king was not proud? "I sacrificed everything and sold myself as a slave because I was concerned about your safety and longed for your gentleness. I wanted to live to see you one last time. Do you know all this? If you knew, why did you kill your brother when you met him again? I have raised countless snakes and developed countless poisons. I often test the poisons on my own body, but have I ever hurt you?" It was as red as blood, and his heart was also bleeding. The Snake Lord felt sad, and his heart was throbbing with pain, although many people thought that they had no heart. The owner of the eyes saw the change in the Snake Lord's eyes and said, "I know you are angry, and I am angry with myself. I shouldn't have done this. I should have told you in advance, but I was worried that you wouldn't listen to me. I had no other choice. No other choice." These 4 words were so heartless, shameless, and irresponsible. Just because you said no other choice, you poisoned your brother? When you were kidnapped, I had better choices, such as running away or hiding in the mountains, but I chose to listen to their orders and became a cruel killer. When I was defeated, I could choose to die or jump into the river, but I chose to sacrifice my eyes and become a snake slave. Slave. It was an insult to the snake monarch race that the snake monarch race was reduced to such a title. But he did it without hesitation. I can say that I had no other choice, but did I say that? You know, our natural enemies are those snake catchers, the owner of the eyes continued. I was hunted by the snake catchers. They should have dug out my eyes, but they didn't do that. They could have destroyed me, but they didn't. They trusted me and gave me freedom. The snake lord wanted to laugh, although he looked uglier when he laughed than when he didn't laugh. But he couldn't raise the corner of his mouth, and his face didn't show any extra expression. He was like a zombie. The only expression he could make was an expressionless face. In order to save you, I dug out my snake eyes and gave them away. Someone kidnapped you and only kept your snake eyes. Then, you became someone else's loyal servant. How cruel was this world? How unfair was it? Brother, the owner of the eyes gently touched the snake lord's face and said, "Rest well. I won't hurt you." A single tear appeared in his eye, then slid down his cheeks. Wasn't this kind of damage considered as damage? Brother, seeing the snake lord's tears, the owner of the eyes finally panicked. She wiped the tears from the snake lord's face and said, "Brother, don't cry. I can't let you go, otherwise he'll be angry. Do you want to talk? Let me talk with you, okay?" The owner of the eyes took out a pill from her pocket. She took half of the pill and put it in the snake lord's mouth. "Brother, this is half of the antidote. Even if you take the antidote, you'll only recover half of your strength," the owner of the eyes warned him. "Don't even think about running away, otherwise I'll beat you down again." As soon as the antidote entered his throat, his body felt refreshed. The snake lord's burning body eased a bit. He could feel his eyeballs moving. Then his hands and feet could move. The snake lord's tears flowed even faster. His voice was hoarse like sand rubbing against each other as he asked, "Why? Brother, why?" "Brother, he's the most handsome man in the world, as well as the most charismatic man. He's like my brother to me." At this moment, the snake lord's heart was dead. That man is the most handsome man in the world, the most charismatic man in the world. That man is like my brother. Then what am I? Brother, don't be angry, okay? I don't want you to get hurt. I'll protect you. Once this is over, I'll take you to see him. He's a really, really good person. He'll take good care of you. The owner of the eyes spoke with concern. "When the time comes, I'll ask him to help me take back your snake's eye. He'll definitely agree. He's a very capable person. He'll never break his promise." "Kill me," the snake lord said. "Brother, I'll say," the snake lord gathered all his strength and roared at the owner of the eyes, "Kill me." At this moment, his heart was dead. It's said that when a person is close to death, they'll experience a moment of lucidity before death. Fang Yin felt like he was about to die, because his body's current condition was very strange. When Bai Xiu stabbed his chest with the thunderclap sword Qi, his Tai Chi heart suddenly stopped, and the Tai Chi domain also disappeared. It was like when you were driving, but the car ran out of gas. It was like when you were watching TV, but the electricity went out in your house. This was the same situation as 3 years ago. The Tai Chi heart once again became a dead fetus. Ever since he comprehended the Tai Chi heart, it had become a part of Fang Yan's body. For him, the Tai Chi heart was one of the most important organs in his body, second only to the vital organ between his legs. However, now that this important part had disappeared, it was as if the body had suddenly lost its limbs, which was hard to accept. "Maybe I'm really going to die," Fang Yin dejectedly thought. The elders of Swallow Dock were right. I'm still not as good as Bai Xiu. While Fang Yin was in complete despair, the Tai Chi heart once again spun. When the Tai Chi heart died, the extreme yang energy quickly decreased and disappeared. The core of the Tai Chi heart lost its ability to resist, and the vicious and violent energy that had gathered around the Tai Chi heart in the past instantly filled the core. The Tai Chi heart spun again, and it was even more violent than before. It was like a tank without brakes, more like a plane that had lost control. Rumble. They whooshed, carrying a faint crimson glow. Fang Yin could clearly see that his Tai Chi heart had turned black. A black Tai Chi heart. This was the first time Fang Yin saw it, and the first time he knew of its existence. Black Tai Chi. Whoosh! The sword in by Shio's hand stabbed straight at Phoenix's chest. Stabbed at her heart. Help her. Let her die together with the person she loved. Fang Yin. Phoenix closed her eyes in despair, subconsciously calling out Fang Yan's name. She knew that she was really going to die. There was a smile of relief on her face. The feeling of death was really good. Whoosh! Bai Shio's sword pierced through Phoenix's chest. Chapter 585. I'm sorry. Bai Shio said these 3 words in his heart. He didn't like Phoenix saying these 3 words to him, because when Phoenix said sorry, she would really do something that would let him down. He also had to say sorry, and he also had to do something that would let Phoenix down. So he said, I'm sorry. Bai Shio closed his eyes in pain. Phoenix and Fang Yin were childhood sweethearts. So how could he and Phoenix not be childhood sweethearts? Although Phoenix and Fang Yin spent more time together when they were young, Phoenix spent more time with him after becoming sensible. After becoming his girlfriend, the time she spent with Fang Yin could be counted on one hand. Bai Shio was a smart person. He understood Phoenix's thoughts and the meaning of her childish actions. But he also knew that Phoenix would eventually get together with him. They would get married, have children, and become lovers for life. In television dramas, when the female lead was molested by a bad guy, she would often shout, "Even if you have my body, don't even think about getting my heart." Bai Shio always felt that there was something wrong with this line. I love your body. Where's your heart? Although it was a little unpleasant, as long as you have me, it's fine. When your body has become mine, will your heart still be far away from me? Bai Shio had confidence in himself. If Fang Yin died, all problems would no longer be problems. Phoenix would be sad for a while, but she would still hold his arm and walk into the wedding hall. However, the Phoenix's final decision disappointed him and made him feel despair. Bai Shio was very sad. He felt that he was even sadder than Fang Yin. Compared to Bai Shio, Fang Yan's sadness couldn't be considered sadness at all. At most, it could be considered as a kidney injury. If this sword fell, Fang Yin would die, and so would Phoenix. Bai Shio believed in the sword in his hand. His thunderclap sword rarely appeared, and when it did, it never missed. Swish! Bai Shio suddenly opened his eyes. Something was wrong. He saw his sword pierce Phoenix's chest with his own eyes, but he didn't hear the familiar sound of a sharp blade cutting through flesh. His sword was fast enough, and Phoenix's flesh was tender enough. If the thunderclap sword cut through flesh, it would be a clean and crisp sound of paper cutting. Crack. The sword went straight to the top, clean and neat, without any sloppiness. Swoosh was the sound of an empty net. It was the sound of an empty net without a single fish being caught. It was the sound of a knife cutting through the air. The Phoenix had disappeared. Fang Yin had also disappeared. Bai Shio broke out in cold sweat from shock. How could Fang Yin disappear? How could Fang Yin disappear? Just now, Bai Shio's ingenious plan had deliberately allowed Fang Yin to snatch the thunderclap sword away, while he himself had hidden the sword chi of the thunderclap sword and stabbed it towards Fang Yan's abdomen. That sword strike was enough to take his life. Even if Fang Yin was not dead yet, it was impossible for him to escape and counterattack. What exactly happened? Not only did Fang Yin turn pale with fright, but the others were also panicking as they searched for traces of Fang Yin. Their target this time was Fang Yin, and their mission was to kill Fang Yin. If Fang Yin escaped, their mission would be declared a failure, and they would have to face endless revenge from Fang Yin in the future. Of course, they were not afraid of Fang Yan's revenge at all. At most, they would just wrap him up like a dumpling again. But who would want to do the same thing twice? Where is he? Where is he? Xiao Mu roared angrily and punched a large rock that could be hiding nearby. Crack! The large rock was hit by the fiery red shadow of the fist and broke into 2 from middle. Kongzhu did not yell at his brother, and he also continuously punched the dense thicket. Crack, crack, crack! Grass and trees flew everywhere, and the sound of branches and grass breaking could be heard continuously. There was also the smell of grass spreading through the night wind, and it was a rich fragrance that entered the nose. Everyone split up and searched. The man in black once again took out the Proud World mobile phone from his pocket. Originally, they thought that they no longer needed guns, but looking at the current situation, the proud world still had a chance to display its great strength. They did not feel too angry about Fong Yan's disappearance, but instead felt a tinge of joy. They had come to surround Fong Yan, but Bai Xiu alone had taken all the credit. Now that Bai Xiu had made a mistake and Fong Yan had disappeared, if Fong Yan could fall under the muzzle of their proud world gun, it would be the most beneficial for them. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu, and where there was Jianghu, there would be fights. The small team of a few people besieging them all had their own thoughts. The two old men who were practicing silent meditation were calm. After scanning the night sky, their eyes stopped on a slightly protruding rock. Whoosh! A piercingly cold gust of wind swept past, and a black figure appeared on the protruding rock. No, there were two. Because Fong Yan was holding the phoenix in his arms, it looked like the two of them had become one at first glance. Phoenix hugged Fong Yan's neck and looked at Fong Yan's eyes with surprise. She asked in a daze, "You're not dead?" "I'm not dead," Fong Yan said. Phoenix saved Fong Yan. When Bai Xiu was about to stab Fong Yan's heart, Phoenix stepped forward and used her body to block Bai Xiu's thunderclap sword. Although Bai Xiu still decided to kill Fong Yan in the end, and he even killed the phoenix that was blocking his way, the phoenix bought time for Fong Yan bought the most precious time. When Fong Yan's life was on the line, Fong Yan's Taiji heart's righteousness was reduced to 0, and the hostility and anger beside it poured in. These gases drove the core of the Taiji heart to spin again. However, this time, the Taiji heart was no longer white or green, but black. It was pitch black, so black that it was like the night, like a black eyeball. The black gas saved the Taiji heart, reviving it again. After reviving, the spinning Taiji heart once again produced righteousness and yang energy. These righteousness and yang energy began to repel the hostility and anger. They were natural enemies that would not rest until one side was dead. The two sides fought, you attack, I defend, and in the end it turned into a situation of black and white defending one side. Half black and half white, it looked like a Taiji diagram. When Fong Yan first started cultivating, his grandfather, Fong Huwei, gave him a Taiji diagram. Fong Yan felt that this gift was too common, and he was a bit unhappy. He even pulled his grandfather's hand and asked if he could change it. Fong Huwei laughed and said to Fong Yan, "The Taiji diagram is ever-changing and unfathomable. 20 years ago, I thought I understood it. 20 years later, I found that I couldn't understand it. Now I can only see the black and white Taiji fish. You should take a closer look and see what you can see." Fong Yan took the Taiji diagram and looked at it. He could only see the black and white arcs on the Taiji diagram. The circle of the Taiji diagram represented one, the universe, and Wuji. Taiji was limited heaven, and Wuji was infinite heaven. Taiji was existence, and Wuji was nothingness. Taiji was 3, and Wuji was 1. The black and white colors of the diagram represented yin and yang, and heaven and earth. The boundary between black and white was the human division that divided the world of yin and yang. The black dot in the white represented yin and yang, and the white dot in the black represented yang and yin. The Taiji fish, one black and one white, one yin and one yang. Yin gave birth to yang, and yang gave birth to yin. Yin and yang restrained each other, and yin and yang gave birth to each other. Endless growth. A jar of water was half drunk, and there was only half left. A bag of rice was eaten by 5 kilograms, and it was naturally 10 years less. The same was true for the strength of the body. However, because Taiji and yin and yang gave birth to each other, Fong Yan's body was instantly filled with strength. Every time someone threw a punch, they would use up a punch's strength. However, with the eternal vitality, every time you threw a punch, the strength of your punch would be instantly replenished by the heart of Taiji. The strength of your body would never be exhausted. Fong Yan also saved Phoenix. At the most critical and dangerous moment, just as Bai Xiu's sword was about to pierce through her chest, Fong Yan moved like lightning, hugging Phoenix and escaping from the battle. Phoenix was injured, Although by Xiu's thunderclap sword hadn't pierced into Phoenix's flesh, the thunderclap sword, which was held by Xiu, had already cut through Phoenix's clothes and left a deep wound on her chest. A long and thin hole had appeared on Phoenix's chest, and fresh blood was spurting out of the hole. Phoenix's black night clothes had turned brownish red, wet and sticking to her flesh. Because the hole was too big, even the bra strap connecting the two pieces of her underwear had been cut. A large piece of snow-white skin was exposed to the air, and two lumps of pink flesh were faintly discernible in front of Fang Yan's eyes. Phoenix's body was exhausted, and her life was in danger. However, when she landed, no, she hadn't landed, her body was still in Fang Yan's embrace. The moment she escaped danger, she asked Fang Yan with a face full of surprise, "You didn't die?" At that time, she didn't even know if she was dead or alive. Fang Yan looked at the wound on Phoenix's chest and frowned, saying, "I didn't die. Not only will I not die, I will also live well, very well." As Fang Yan spoke, the hand supporting Phoenix's back was transferring Taiji energy into her body, which could extend her life force and help her quickly recover her strength. His other hand fumbled in his robe, and he took out a small black bottle from his pocket. With a flick of his finger, the cap of the small bottle flew out. Then he poured all the medicinal foam in the small black bottle onto Phoenix's wound, layer after layer. His voice was calm, but with a hint of killing intent, and he said with a smile, "Those who want me dead, I will make them die a horrible death." Chapter 586. Fang Yan glanced at Bai Xiu, Kongzhu, and the others and said, "What you owe me, I will take it all back with interest. Who wouldn't be stabbed in the Jianghu? You can't always be stabbed in the Jianghu." Fang Yan had just been stabbed, and now he wanted to stab others a few times. Of course, Fang Yan was not a reckless idiot who sought death. Every word he said was carefully thought out. For example, when he said, "Those who want me dead, I will make them die a horrible death," he had already secretly checked his body and secretly tried to circulate his qi several times. He felt the abnormality of his body and knew that he was full of vitality and strength. The heart of Tai Chi rotated more smoothly than before, but it was also more majestic. Yin and Yang coexisted, which was Tai Chi if there was only Yin without Yang, or if there was only Yang without Yin. It could not be considered as comprehending the true meaning of Tai Chi. However, there were some things that could not be achieved with hard work. For example, the heart of Tai Chi naturally liked things that were clean, pure, and righteous. It was a serious case of cleanliness. Therefore, the murderous aura, hostility, anger, and other negative emotions could not even think of approaching it, let alone integrating with it. By chance, Fang Yan was stabbed by Bai Xiu, and his life was hanging by a thread. The heart of Tai Chi also stopped rotating. Fang Yan's body was extremely weak. There was no clear and righteous energy to fill the heart of Tai Chi, and there was not enough Yang energy to drive the core to rotate. At this time, the hostility and murderous aura that had accumulated for many years took advantage of the weakness and instantly occupied the heart of Tai Chi and led it to revive and rotate again. No one would have thought that what could not be achieved with hard work could be achieved by being beaten. If the previous Fang Yan was Iron Man who could only fight with batteries, the current Fang Yan was Ultraman who had been armed with eternal energy. Therefore, Fang Yan wanted to take revenge. Revenge on Bai Xiu, revenge on Kongzhu, revenge on Blade King, revenge on Xiumu, and revenge on all the people behind the scenes who had set up this fatal trap. He wanted to take revenge on all those who wanted to kill him. This was something he had to do, and this was something a man absolutely had to pursue. "Fang Yan, hurry up and leave," Phoenix hurriedly said. "There are too many of them, and they're too powerful. The real mastermind hasn't even appeared yet. You can't defeat them. Are there more powerful people hiding inside?" Fang Yan asked. "Yes." Phoenix nodded firmly. "Fang Yan, you're no match for them. Your power alone is too weak." Fang Yan sneered and said, "If you fight, you can win. If you don't try, how do you know you can't? These people tried to kill me, I won't let them go so easily. If I don't do anything, can they still be considered men? As Fong Yin spoke, he carried the phoenix and flew towards the foot of the mountain. His legs ran so fast that he looked like a rabbit being chased by a shotgun. Oh God, his body was flying. Everyone was dumbfounded. This kid had been yelling and screaming for half a day. He was so passionate and fearless. Yet he just ran away with his butt in the air. That kid ran away. Xiaomu opened his mouth wide and shouted. That kid ran away. Kongzhu roared and yelled, Chase! We can't let him get away like this. With that, he took the lead and chased after Fong Yan's butt. Two black-clothed men held proud world pistols and fired at Fong Yan's receding figure. Each of them fired twice, but Fong Yan didn't run in a straight line. He darted left and right, up and down, looking like a mischievous ghost. Chase! The black-clothed men held their spears and chased after Fong Yan. The two old men who practiced silent meditation were silent, but they kept watching Fong Yan's movements. When they saw Fong Yan carrying the phoenix and running away, they reacted immediately. On the other hand, Bai Xiu's reaction was slower. Bai Xiu held the thunderclap sword and stood in place. He looked in the direction of Solitary Sword Peak and sighed softly. 1 life, 2 luck, 3 feng shui. Looks like your father buried a good feng shui. Bai Xiu's long robe flapped, and he dashed forward like lightning. Tonight, Fong Yan must die. Fong Yan ran very fast, very fast. He knew that he was full of energy now. He felt that he could defeat several people on his own. He even felt that he could wipe out a group in one go. If he was bullied, he would immediately be bullied 10 times or 100 times more. Shouldn't a man be so ruthless and domineering? Shouldn't blood for blood and a tooth for a tooth be like this? Shouldn't he take revenge on the spot and not let the hatred linger overnight? However, Fong Huahua was Fong Huahua. He always knew what he wanted the most. What he wanted the most now was to survive. As long as he lived, so did the phoenix. If Fong Yin chose to stay, he would have to face Bai Xiu, who he still didn't know his limits. He would have to face the strange brothers Diablo and Xiaomu. He would have to face the pair of unfathomable old men. He would have to face the proud pistol. Most importantly, Fong Yin believed the phoenix's words. The phoenix said that the real culprit behind the scenes hadn't appeared yet. There were even more powerful experts who hadn't made a move. There were too many of them. They were too powerful. What kind of power was hidden behind the darkness? Fong Yin was a smart person, smart to the point that he often lost his backbone. For example, at this time, Fong Yin should have fought with them without fear of death. He should have killed everyone who tried to harm him. Didn't that sound like an invincible hero? However, Fong Yin ran away shamelessly. He had to run, because he didn't know how many people were hiding in the darkness. He didn't know what kind of people were hiding in the darkness. If he could defeat those people, it would naturally be a good thing. If he couldn't defeat those people and was surrounded by them again, his backbone would turn into foolishness. Fong Yin didn't do things that he wasn't sure of. He also wouldn't risk his life, because he knew better than anyone what the meaning of his life was and how many people had placed their hopes on it. Only living was everything. It was never too late for a vile person to take revenge. A gentleman wouldn't retreat or give way. He would test his blood on the spot. Fong Yin admitted that he was a vile person. Fong Yin. The phoenix lay in Fong Yan's arms, feeling his steady and powerful heartbeat. She let the wind howl in her ears and said, Fong Yin, throw me away, put me down. That's impossible. Fong Yin said with a smile. You lied to me. I still haven't got my revenge. How could I let you go so easily? Fong Yin, you've already gotten your revenge. The phoenix said, even if you don't say anything or do anything, I'll still blame myself to death. They're all chasing after us. Quickly let me go, otherwise you won't be able to run away. Who said I ran away? Fong Yan's body jumped over a large rock that was as tall as a person and said, I'm in a hurry to take you to the hospital, otherwise I would have already beaten them down. When did I, Fong Yin, ever run away from someone? Puffed. The phoenix laughed. The laughter quickly turned into a violent moan, because the wound on her chest was pulled, The pain made her hover between life and death. Her expression twisted. "Shameless," the phoenix coquettishly scolded. "You're still shameless." In the past, whenever Fong Yin said something witty, the phoenix would also act like this, pointing at Fong Yan's head and scolding him. "Shameless. You're still shameless." Unfortunately, that was a long time ago. Things remain the same, but people have changed. "Don't talk anymore," Fong Yin said. "Your talking will affect my speed. If that happens, we really won't be able to run." Fong Yin didn't turn around, but he could sense that someone was chasing after him. He even knew that there were a few people chasing after him. The one running at the very front was Bai Xiao. It was still Bai Xiao. Fong Yin was very familiar with Bai Xiao's presence and his running style, just like how Bai Xiao was also very familiar with his escape route and running style. Fong Yin had already reached the foot of the mountain, still a few kilometers away from where he parked his car. "Oh!" Fong Yin stopped. Fong Yin put the phoenix down on a large rock on the side of the road, gently stroked her face and smiled. "Wait a bit." The phoenix grabbed Fong Yin's hand, her eyes as soft as water, and softly said, "Fong Yin, I might not be able to wait." "Even if you can't wait, you still have to wait." Fong Yin pretended to be angry. "On TV, even if the female lead is about to die, they'll still say a few words to the male lead to say their goodbyes. Wait until I get rid of Bai Xiao, then we'll have a few words to say our goodbyes." "Fong Yin, don't worry about me. Hurry." Fong Yin naturally wouldn't leave, and he couldn't leave either. Bai Xiao was in hot pursuit. He had already caught up again. No, he wasn't chasing after him. He had already taken a shortcut to intercept him. Fong Yin would either have to jump off the cliff or run back the way he came, back up the mountain. There was an interception in front and a pursuer behind. Fong Yin was stuck between a rock and a hard place. "Wait a bit. It won't be long." Fong Yin patted the back of the phoenix's hand, gesturing for her to let go. The phoenix squinted her eyes and smiled, asking, "Do you know why I'm called a phoenix?" Fong Yin shook his head, saying, "You never told me before. Just tell me in a bit." Fong Yin stood up, once again facing Bai Xiao, who was standing at a high place with his sword. "Oh!" With a leap, Bai Xiao jumped down from the hillside that was dozens of meters high. His long robe fluttered in the wind, as if he was a celestial being. Bai Xiao looked at Fong Yin, who was in a sorry state, but whose eyes were still bright, and smiled. "I'll tell you a secret. I have another profession, snake catcher." "Snake catcher." Fong Yan's expression froze, his pupils turned bloodshot, and his eyes instantly turned blood red as he gritted his teeth. "Then my dad, he was killed by you?" Chapter 587. Snake Lord's sister was called Wang Fong in the orphanage. It was the name given to her by the Fatso Dean. The Fatso Dean's surname was Wang. In order to express that she was a caring person and to let the outside world know that she was a family with the orphans, she gave all the children in the orphanage names like Wang Fong, Wang Chao, Wang Zhong, Wang Ling, etc. Because she was too careless, she even named the two girls Wang Yin and Wang Yin. Every time she screamed for Wang Yin, the two girls would look at her blankly, not knowing who she was looking for. After Snake Lord and Wang Fong escaped from the orphanage, Snake Lord only called Wang Fong little sister. Because he called her little sister for so long, he almost forgot her original name. But at this moment, he suddenly remembered his little sister's name. Her name was Wang Fong. "Kill me." Snake Lord used all the strength in his body and roared at Wang Fong. At this moment, he felt that living was the greatest torture. All of his efforts and sacrifices, his pursuit and goals, his happiness and faith, all collapsed at this moment. He didn't even know what was the point of living. If it wasn't for his little sister, he would already be a heartless dead man. Of course, Wang Fong wouldn't kill her brother because, in her heart, her brother was the second best man in the world, aside from that man. Wang Fong loved her brother a lot and was very grateful to him. If her brother didn't want to protect her, he wouldn't have offended the dean and escaped from the orphanage. If they didn't escape from the orphanage, they wouldn't have met their master and become monsters with poisonous snakes. Before they were kidnapped, her brother was her only family. "Brother, don't be angry." Seeing her brother like this, Wang Fong was a bit worried and hurriedly explained, I don't want to kill you. It's because I don't want to hurt you. That's why I drug you with Qi Hong and brought you here. Don't worry. When things are over there, I'll get the signal and let you go. I'll detoxify all the poison in your body. At that time, you can go wherever you want. What are you doing? Snake Lord's voice still carried a thick Xiangxi accent. He didn't usually speak, so he hadn't learned other languages. You want to kill Fong Yin? I didn't kill him. They wanted to kill Fong Yin, the Snake Lord sneered. Fong Yin is my master. He holds my snake's eye. If Fong Yin dies, I will also die. Is this what you mean by not harming me? No, brother, no. Wang Fong quickly shook her head and said, he promised me that he would help me take back your snake's eye. He will help me retrieve your snake's eye before he kills Fong Yin. Besides, even if they kill Fong Yin, if Fong Yin doesn't have enough time to crush your snake's eye, you will still be fine. What if Fong Yin thinks that I have betrayed him? What if he squeezes my snake eye until it explodes before they kill him? Impossible. He's very powerful. He won't give Fong Yin a chance. He'll definitely do what he promised me. Others can't, but he can. Brother, just trust him like you trust me. Just this once, okay? Snake Lord's face was full of bitterness. His voice was very rustling, like a poisonous snake walking on the ground. Who is he? Wang Fong didn't answer. You like him? I like him. You want to marry him? Wang Fong waved her hand and said, Brother, I won't. He's very excellent. He's very excellent. So he won't like you? Wang Fong's expression became sad. He's only good to me. He treats me like a little sister. Snake Lord felt his chest become heavy. His heart was in so much pain that he couldn't breathe. He's only good to you. He only treats you like a little sister. Why are you so loyal to him? Snake Lord tried his best to suppress the pain in his heart and looked at Wang Fong. Little sister, come with me. It's too dangerous outside. Let's go back to Xiangxi. We won't care about anything. We won't get involved in anything. We'll just raise snakes like before. Brother, I want to go back, Wang Fong said. What's in the mountains? There's nothing in the mountains. You want to watch TV? There's not even electricity. Brother, I don't want to go back. We shouldn't live in the mountains. We should live in the city. We can live a better life. Brother, trust me, I'll give you a better life. I'll buy you a house. I'll buy you a car. I'll take you to eat whatever you want. We should be like everyone else, Snake Lord looked down at himself and said with a bitter voice, How can we be like everyone else? I'm Snake Lord, you're Snake Lord's little sister. We only know how to raise snakes. We can, Wang Fong said. He'll help us. He'll help us settle down in the city. He'll help us get everything we want, as long as we're willing to listen to him and help him deal with some things. Brother, you can't go back anymore. If you have a child in the future, what about your child? Will you let him raise snakes with you as well? Child? Snake Lord was confused. Child? That kind of creature was too far away for him. In fact, he had only just understood what love was and what it felt like. Brother, we can't go back for the sake of our child, Wang Fong said with a firm voice. Let's go back. Let's go back to Xiangxi, Snake Lord begged with a trembling voice. Brother, don't force me. The Snake Lord's body suddenly bounced up, like a poisonous snake lurking in the bushes and suddenly launching an attack. He reached out his hand and grabbed Wang Fong's neck. Snake Lord stared at his sister's face with a ferocious expression and said, Did you forget? Not only can the golden-eye python's gallbladder cure the strange red, but also the flower-skin snake's saliva. I have a flower-skin snake in my pocket. Brother. Wang Fong's face turned purple. She looked at her brother in horror. Snake Lord's hand squeezed with all his might and said with a vicious voice, If you don't go back with me, I'll kill you. Fong Yan's father, Fong Yixing, died on the way home. This was a huge wound in Fong Yan's heart. It seemed that he had fully recovered, but when the dead skin was accidentally peeled off, the abscesses inside could be seen. It was because of the guilt and self-blame in his heart that Fong Yin lived in Swallow Dock for 3 years to mourn for his father. The hatred of his father's killer was as deep as the sea, and it was absolutely irreconcilable. However, what made people feel hopeless and powerless was that Fong Yin had no way to find out who the murderer was. The person who killed his father was the previous Snake Lord, who was also the master of the current Snake Lord, but the previous Snake Lord was killed by Bai Xiao, who happened to pass by. In other words, his father killed the previous Snake Lord, and the previous Snake Lord also killed his father. In the words of the snake slave of the current Snake Lord, both of them died together. Fang Yin also suspected Bai Xiao because when his father was attacked, Bai Xiao happened to pass by. How could there be such a coincidence? However, he could only suspect because he had no evidence to prove that Bai Xiao was involved in this matter. Moreover, even if Bai Xiao didn't get along with him, he was also from Swallow Dock. How could the people of Swallow Dock attack their own people? Also, if Bai Xiao was involved in this matter, he didn't need to show up at all. He only needed to let the previous Snake Lord or other experts do it. Did he need to show up in public and fight with the previous Snake Lord? Did he need to let everyone know of his existence? To know that he was closely related to Fang Yixing's death, Fang Yin waited in Swallow Dock for 3 years, but the killer didn't attack again. Now, Bai Xiao stood up and said that he had another profession, which was a snake catcher. If the previous Snake Lord was a snake slave kept by Bai Xiao, then the death of his father, Fang Yixing, was orchestrated by Bai Xiao, including the fact that they forced his uncle to poison the Fang family soup pot and almost poisoned the entire Fang family to death. Bai Xiao didn't directly answer Fang Yan's question. He smiled and said, "The only people that Xiangxi can show off are those snake keepers, but they're quite interesting. They gave themselves an awe-inspiring name called Snake Lord. The most outstanding snake keeper in every world will become the Snake Lord. They will die of old age and rise again. You should be very familiar with this. Don't you have a snake slave with you? That little snake should have told you everything, right? I only want to know one answer. Did you kill my father?" Fang Yin asked calmly. The angrier he was, the more he had to maintain a calm state of mind. This was what the old drunkard, Mo Qingdi, warned him. However, what Fang Yin didn't know was that his eyes had already turned blood red, like a Shurid demon whose eyes were bloodshot. They weren't very powerful, but fortunately, they kept all kinds of poisonous snakes. They were strange and vicious, and they could be of great use in many situations. It's a pity that the snake I raised died. You only need to tell me, did you kill my father? Fang Yin asked for the 3rd time. He already knew the answer in his heart, but he needed to be sure of it. He needed to be firm and unquestionable. Bai Xiao also looked at Fang Yin calmly and said, "Since you want to know so much, then I'll tell you yes. I arranged for the Snake Lord to kill him, but he was too stupid. Before he died, he hugged my leg and begged me to help him pass a few words back. At that time, he must have regarded me as his savior, right? Dad." Thinking of his father's tragic death, Fang Yin cried out in grief and indignation, tears falling like rain. Chapter 588. He was humiliated when he was alive, and he was humiliated after he died. Any child who saw this scene would feel as if their heart was being cut by a knife. Fang Yin, your father died because of you. Don't you feel any guilt or remorse? If I were you, I would live in seclusion for the rest of my life and never step out of Swallow Dock, Bai Xiao said coldly. Bai Xiao, Fang Yin roared hoarsely. With a crisp crack, Fang Yin had actually crushed 2 teeth in his mouth. Bai Xiao held a long sword in his hand, and his robe fluttered in the wind. He held his head high and puffed out his chest, exuding an air of arrogance. He said with a face full of disdain, "What can I do even if I crush my teeth? I want you dead." Fang Yin said word by word. His heart was bleeding, and his blood was already boiling. However, at this moment, his body was bone-chilling. Because of Bai Xiao's words, "Your father died because of you." Fang Yan's father, Fang Yixing, was only a painter and was considered trash in the eyes of many people in Swallow Dock. However, such trash was ambushed by so many experts and was hunted down in such a big way. What value did he have that the enemy needed to mobilize so many experts? Fang Yin thought back and guessed countless times. He knew that his father died because of him. But before the truth was revealed, he was unwilling to believe it. That was fear and also escape. Now, Bai Xiu stood out and directly told Fong Yin, your father died because of you. How could Fong Ji escape? How could he not believe it? Bai Xiu killed his father, and his father died because of him. Fong Yin felt like his body was about to explode. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be interested in killing a painter, Bai Xiu said calmly. Fong Yin, if you were a little stronger back then, if you could run a little faster, we would have met for Real long ago. The reason why I appeared at the scene of Fong Yixing's death was not to kill Fong Yixing, but to wait for you. The world is boundless, the sky is filled with wind and snow. At that time, we should have made a decision. Unfortunately, you're too slow. You've wasted the beautiful scenery that I've specially arranged for you. It's not too late. Fong Yan's mouth was bleeding. It was the blood of the teeth and the blood of the tongue. His expression was ferocious, and his eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. Fong Yan's body stood there quietly, but his clothes began to flutter unconsciously. That was the result of true qi surging. According to past practice, when the true qi lifted up the clothes, it was round and curved. It was the Vajra barrier and iron skin shirt, a defensive stance. But this time was different. The edge of his shirt was raised like a spear, spreading outwards arrogantly. Every strand of hair stood up like a hedgehog about to attack. At this time, Fong Yin was full of savagery, swords and sabers on his body, ready to cut his enemies into pieces at any time. It's not too late yet, Fong Yin said with a heavy voice. He had never felt that he had to use so much energy to speak. You're not dead. I'm still alive, so it's not too late to make a decision. That's why I chose one sword peak. Bai Xiu smiled and said, 3 years ago, you fought against the Japanese sword god Chiba Hashirama at the top of one sword peak and won, instantly becoming famous. When the news reached Swallow Dock, everyone was excited, and your grandfather Fong Huwei went to the village entrance to set off a string of firecrackers. Master drank a cup of wine on the spot, saying that the Fong family has a successor. That's why you're jealous of me. Jealous? Bai Xiu smiled and said, for people like us, if it's only because of jealousy, is it worth it to make such a big move? Then why is it? Because of benefits, Bai Xiu answered. When have I ever destroyed your benefits? You've destroyed a lot of people's benefits. You just don't know it. Bai Xiu chuckled and said, Fong Yin, you're too smart. People who are too smart don't have a good ending. A lot of people don't want you to continue living because everyone knows that you're not on the same path as everyone else. All right, you started one sword peak, and you'll end one sword peak. That's a start and an end. I've been loyal to you, haven't I? Come, Fong Yin waved his hand at Bai Xiu, assuming a defensive stance. Bai Xiu raised his sword, staring straight at Fong Yin, and said, one sword shocks the wind and thunder. Now I'll let you see the true power of the thunderclap sword. Bai Xiu's body disappeared. Without any warning, without any movement, his body disappeared into thin air. Speed. This was the ultimate speed. When a person's speed reaches a certain limit, even the eyes will be deceived. When you see that he's still standing there, he's already preparing. When he's already in front of you, you're just surprised that he's already disappeared. Just like the sword on the mountain peak, Bai Xiu's body was still hidden in the endless darkness. However, the sound of thunder could be faintly heard in the sky, and lightning streaked across the horizon. A flash of lightning appeared in Fong Yan's pupils. That lightning was originally far away, as if it came from high up in the sky. That lightning seemed to have grown antennae, extending infinitely downward. Rumble. The lightning arrived in an instant, fiercely striking at Fong Yan's head. Fong Yan's body jumped up high, as if he was actively welcoming the lightning. Jumping steps to beat the tiger. This was a very common stance in Tai Chi, however. When used by a Tai Chi expert like Fong Yin, it wasn't common at all. His body was like a crane, and he jumped like a soaring dragon. His left and right hands drew circles. Then when the lightning was about to arrive, he punched. Crack, crack, crack. The peerless power of Tai Chi intertwined with the lightning, producing a deafening explosion. Bai Xiu's thunderclap sword drew out lightning, while Fong Yan's Tai Chi was like a dynamite. Using dynamite to collide with lightning. When two extremely strong and hard objects came into contact, it would naturally end in mutual destruction. Whoosh! Bai Xiu's body reappeared, returning to the position before he attacked. He left without a trace and came without a shadow, as fast as lightning in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of ordinary people, it was as if he had never left. Bai Xiu looked at Fang Yan with a solemn expression, saying, "It seems that you've gained a lot from this trip to Solitary Sword Peak." Bai Xiu felt very strange. Fang Yan was clearly about to be stabbed to death by his sword. So why did he suddenly regain his vitality and run faster than a rabbit, as if nothing had happened? He knew that Fang Yan's Heart of Tai Chi was one of the most amazing martial arts in the world, and also the most unfathomable one. This was because, apart from a few geniuses, very few people of the Tai Chi lineage could comprehend the Heart of Tai Chi, and the Tai Chi realm would appear in their minds. However, even those few geniuses would soon come to a halt and would not be able to take huge strides forward in this field. Even the person himself did not understand the Heart of Tai Chi, so how would an outsider like Bai Xiu understand? If I can disappoint and confuse those idiots, it would be my greatest honor, Fang Yan said with a cold smile. He knew what Bai Xiu was confused about. With his previous strength, he would never jump up and directly use his chi to receive the lightning from the thunderclap sword, because he felt that it was not safe. Bai Xiu knew Fang Yan's strength, so he would not take the risk. He had even thought of his counterattack and had prepared several moves after that one. Unfortunately, his wish was not fulfilled. Fang Yan's counterattack was simple and clean. It seemed to be effortless. This was the suppression of realms, and it was something that made him feel worried. This was the result of the breakthrough of the Heart of Tai Chi, the counterattack, and choice he made after he had enough confidence in his chi and strength. However, was there a need for him to tell all of this to the enemy who killed his father? "Fang Yan, take one more strike from me," Bai Xiu said. Fang Yan laughed heartily. It was a heart-wrenching laugh, to the point where tears were coming out. "Bai Xiu, you shouldn't be called Bai Xiu. You should be called idiot. This is a decisive battle. The only result between us is to fight to the death. Not to mention one strike. Even if it's 100 strikes or 1,000 strikes, I'll take them all. As long as I'm not dead, I'll take every strike from you." Fang Yan's voice was filled with grief and indignation, but it was also extremely carefree. His father died a horrible death, but he didn't know who the murderer was, so he couldn't sleep every night. Most of the time, he could only bury his head in the bathtub, like a tortoise with its head in its shell. Now, he finally knew that the enemy who killed his father, even if he had to use all of his strength, even if he had to use every drop of blood in his body, he would make his opponent stay, or he might be killed by his opponent. But who cared? To avenge my father, I'm willing to die 100 times. Bai Xiu, I know you're a person of the great Yin, and you always like to hide things. People like you can only bury their grievances in their stomach and hold it in when they're bullied. After so many years, your body must be sick from holding it in, right? Use all of your strength. Use your most powerful strike. Then let me kill you, let my father. Fang Yan's voice was choked, and after a few seconds he said, "Let my father be truly proud of me, proud that he has a good son." Bai Xiu's expression was solemn, and he nodded at Fang Yan seriously. "After so many years of grudges, today will be the final end. Fang Yan, I really want to kill you." Bai Xiu became 2 Bai Xiu, then 4 Bai Xiu. His body dashed toward Fang Yan, and every time he dashed forward, he left behind an afterimage. Wrong shadow clone technique. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.